call to order this College Township Council regular meeting for Thursday, June 20th. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Just advise that council did meet in executive session prior to this meeting. Is there any public open discussion for items not on the agenda?
Seeing no hands.
No hands. All right. Are there any new agenda items that members of council wish to request to add? Or staff?
Mr. Chair, I'd like to add the appointment of an interim finance director to the agenda this evening.
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Call a question. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay, do we have any no's? I don't think we have any no's. So we'll add that as new business item 1. So those of you that were excited about no new business. Okay.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
one procedural note. I think we have to identify that the executive session was for a personnel matter.
Oh, yes. The executive session was for a personnel matter. Okay. Plans. Moving on. We don't want to add anything else. You better do it.
Can we take stuff off? Can we it's like budgeting. If we put something on, we gotta take something off.
Plans number 1, Shiloh Commercial Park Phase 1 Final Land Development Plan.
Hello. Thank you.
Not the right one.
No, this one's fine. Just, I must not have said that. Okay. So, thank you. This is the introduction to the Shiloh Commercial Park Phase 1 Final Land Development Plan. The council should be familiar with this. You saw a sketch plan of this subdivision in 2023. And following that, you saw the preliminary plan for the entire subdivision itself. This is the final plan for 3 lots and a residual lot off of Shiloh Road. So with preliminary plans, the Planning Commission sees them, they get recommended by the Planning Commission, approved by council. And then with final plans, since they're really just an extension of the preliminary plan, PC doesn't see those, they come straight to council for your approval. So pretty much everything on the plan you have seen, since preliminary plan shouldn't stray much from, final plan shouldn't stray much from what the preliminary plan says. So this is a proposal to subdivide 2 tax parcels off of Shiloh Road. It's currently the housing of the Maxwell Trucking and Excavating office. That is not going to be part of the subdivision plan. Existing on the property, a farmhouse and a barn. They're currently located on lot 4. So during phase 2 of the final subdivision plan, we'll see that go away. Zoning is general commercial with the wellhead protection overlay. It's a 1,200-foot radius that goes around the wellhead area. Again, the preliminary plan was recommended by the Planning Commission and approved by council. Access, East Trout Road will be 26 feet wide and then will be dedicated to the township. Pedestrian access, I just wanted to note back in 2015, there was a deferral of sidewalks in front of the Maxwell property. This is the opportunity for that sidewalk to be constructed along that strip of land. Next slide. We go into a little bit of traffic impacts. First, stormwater is proposed off-site in Benner Township. It's outside of the wellhead protection area. We also have findings from the first lots 1, 2, and 3 are going to trigger a signal at Trout Road and Shiloh Road. So we added a note on the plan because there's an effort going on right now with PennDOT and other folks within the region, well, the Dale Summit area, studying the greater Shiloh Road area. And if that traffic impact study comes back with recommendations, meaning that it would maybe say, for example, the signal would not be needed or a different type of infrastructure would be there, then we would have 18 months to defer that. That was discussed with PennDOT and a bunch of folks in the room, and so the note exists on the plan. And this is the plan itself. You can see the red line outlines the area where the easement will go out to the stormwater basin. And the gray line that kind of swoops through is the boundary of the wellhead protection zone. And the next slide is just to zoom in a little bit more of the actual subdivision. So you see lots 1, 2, and 3 there. The next, the first one step that was required here was a lot consolidation plan. That's a minor plan that was recorded today. So you'll see in your response letter in your memo, that's one of the conditions of approval. We can check that off because it was recorded today. And finally, staff feels, since this plan is consistent with the preliminary plan, everything is met in the ordinance other than some of these conditions remaining. We are prepared for council to approve this plan. Once this plan is approved, we will see a preliminary final plan for any developments that happen on these subdivided lots.
Okay.
Have we-
Do we have anyone else here to speak to it?
I'm sorry, John Sepp is here.
All right, John.
Representing the clients.
Good evening, I'm John Sepp from Pentair Engineering, and I really don't have anything else to add. Lindsay did a very good job covering the
Okay.
plan.
Okay. All right, council, let's go ahead and start with Eric.
Okay, sure. Two things. Hi, John. I like John's comments.
Very to the point.
He's been to a few of these before, so he's saving his time for me. Two things. So I understand you. The approval of the subdivision automatically then requires what sidewalks to be installed? Normally we don't, but we have in the past required sidewalk installation as part of a subdivision approval. Normally they follow with the individual lots, but I thought I heard you say something.
Yes.
Could you repeat that?
Sidewalks are to be installed as part of this phase, is how.
As part
it
of
is.
this phase, meaning the subdivision approval.
The phase, yes, so the final phase 1 subdivision plan, that's when the sidewalks will be built.
Okay. All the sidewalks shown on here.
There's
all-
sidewalks along Shiloh,
On
there's
Sh-
sidewalks on one side of Trout because the lot on the other side of Trout's not part of this
Right,
subdivision.
the Cabela,
And then there's a sidewalk on the private driveway that's going behind Lot 1.
Okay.
And in front of Lot 3. And there will be surety posted for the sidewalks, so the sidewalks may be constructed at the time that the development of the lots are being done, so you're not tearing up the sidewalks, but they are a requirement of the plan, and there will be surety posted for them.
okay, thanks. Then the second question, just so I understand the traffic, how the traffic study dovetails with what we're approving tonight, because this is complicated. I mean, as you well know, this is just one piece to a lot of stuff that's going to go on out there. If after 18 months, nothing happens at PennDOT, just nobody brings in anything else, if under this plan, then these things get put in by this developer, the right turn lane, and is that how you understand it, John?
Yes, that,
Okay.
we're anticipating a traffic signal at the intersection, and that would be required for occupancy of any kind of development.
All right. So, I just want to make sure I understand that, because that's important. I mean, if nothing happens, 18 months is not a lot of time.
Right.
But the idea of the deferral is to accommodate other things that might happen, so we can come back to the table and PennDOT and figure out what needs, and what role this developer would need to play in it. It might vary, it might be less than what is in here, depending on what else happens. That's the thinking, right?
Right.
Or
exactly.
more, I suppose, but theoretically, upstream development could share in
Absolutely.
Yeah.
The
Yes.
traffic study will then include everything, and then we'll step back to revisit and assess accordingly.
Exactly.
Okay. That's all I had, Lindsay.
Okay, thanks, Eric.
Okay, Tracy.
I was going to ask about the sidewalks. Eric already asked.
Okay. Rich?
No, I just wanted confirmation of when, the timeline, if and when, and, go, no go, all that good kind of stuff, and I think you guys cleared that up for me. Thank you.
Susan?
All questions answered.
Aye.
Then could I have a quick follow-up
Yeah.
to that? John or Lindsay, the 18 months was a number that is dictated by something, or that was a number that the property owner and staff and PennDOT thought would be a good
It
window?
was a number that staff and the property owner identified as an appropriate number given the situation.
Okay, so everybody was on board with the 18 months.
Just to be clear, there was not, to my knowledge, any consultation with PennDOT on that, but 18 months seemed to be an appropriate period of time that was agreeable to both the township and to the developer.
Okay.
In terms of making these types of determinations.
Okay, and so PennDOT's only involvement was to say, okay.
No, we, to my knowledge, no. We did not ask PennDOT whether or not they were fine with 18 months.
Okay, so as part of the land development plan approval, deferring that 18 months on that particular road, those improvements is totally under our,
That is correct.
okay.
Okay. All right, I don't have any questions. Just, so there is a recommended motion. What'd you say was done out of that? What number?
I believe it was number 5.
Number
So
5.
number 5,
Okay.
the Shiloh minor lot consolidation plan was recorded today.
Does anyone want to make that recommended motion minus number 5?
I recommend council move to approve the Shiloh Commercial Park Phase 1 Final Subdivision Plan dated May 20th, 2024, and last revised June 10th, 2024, subject to the following conditions. 1, within 90 days from the date of approval by council, all conditions must be satisfied, final signatures must be obtained, and the plan must be recorded with the Center County Recorder of Deeds office. Failure to meet the 90-day recordation time requirement will render the plan null and void. 2, pay all outstanding review fees. 3, address to the satisfaction of the township engineer any outstanding plan review comments from staff. 4, fully comply with College Township Code Section 180-12. 5, provide the township with an original, fully executed Shiloh Commercial Park preliminary subdivision plan. 6, post surety is approved by the township engineer prior to recordation. 7, provide an intent to serve letter from University Area Joint Authority. 8, provide an intent to serve letter from College Township Water Authority. 9, provide proof from PennDOT Highway Occupancy Permit prior to occupancy. 10, provide proof of National Pollutant Discharge Elimination System approval. 11, provide a draft declaration of stormwater access and maintenance of easement for approval to be recorded with development of each individual lot. 12, record approved shared access and maintenance agreement for lots 1, 2, and 3. 13, work with the College Township zoning officer and Center County 911 to establish addressing for lots 1 through 3 prior to occupancy. And 14, all conditions must be accepted in writing within 7 days from the date of the conditional approval letter from the township engineer.
Do you have a second?
Second.
Okay. Any further discussion?
One more question.
Yeah.
Going back to the 18 months, since it is totally within our discretion, should we get 12, 14 months into this and another development comes online, someone who at least in principle should share in the cost of the impact or the it's totally within our power then to extend that?
I believe that it is. I would have to get a legal clarification on that as far as procedurally how we would need to deal with that. The thinking here is that we understand that PennDOT is presently engaged in this type of an evaluation and has been so for at least a few months. And the thinking behind the 18 months from the date of this approval was that within that time period, we are anticipating some type of determination coming from PennDOT. But to your point, the action as far as, and given the fact that this is a College Township authorization, I believe that gives us the ability to make some type of modification going forward, but I'm not certain that precisely whether it's a minor plan or what the mechanism might be, and I'd have to confer with legal counsel relative to that. But I do believe that it would be in our purview to make that adjustment if there was something in the immediate horizon.
Okay.
And that PennDOT had yet to make their determinations.
And that was my concern, is that the PennDOT thing drags on, and I wouldn't want to see another developer upstream just purposely wait 18 months to submit their plan so that they could, you know, not have to participate in an improvement that, you know, clearly they're going to have and should theoretically have a share of. Okay.
Good.
You know.
Okay, I call the question. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? All right, the ayes have it, none opposed.
Yeah, because otherwise they pay for everything, and then somebody else comes in, doesn't have to pay for anything.
Yeah.
Which happens.
Yeah.
So we still tracking that P2 was pulled?
Yes, the Beaver Stadium renovation and West Side replacement sketch plan has been pulled from this evening at the request of the
Okay. So P3 is the Mountain Indian Manor preliminary subdivision sketch plan.
Michael Pratt is here tonight. He will be going over the sketch plan for Mount Nittany Manor.
Good evening. Michael Pratt, Keller Engineers, on behalf of Mount Nittany Manor Limited Partnership, of which the managing partner is Mr. Tom Songer, who you know well, to reintroduce to you the Mount Nittany Manor subdivision proposal. Mount Nittany Manor LP proposes the development of a 29.5-acre parcel of land located off Matilda Avenue and J Lane in the township as a 50-lot, single-family residential subdivision. The proposed development parcel consists actually of 3 parcels of land, a 20.68-acre lot that was subdivided in 2020. We'll call that the primary parcel, augmented with 2 existing single-family parcels that were platted some time ago off Matilda Avenue, combined into a 21.49-acre total tract of land. This parcel is in the Mount Nittany Terrace neighborhood of College Township, which is south of First Avenue and west of the current terminus of J and Nittany Terrace lanes. And can we rotate that? Now, Wayne.
Keep rotating here. We'll get it.
It's your orientation with north on top.
That's right. So plan north is there. Here's the intersection of, well, that doesn't work.
There's a little pointer if you want to use the pointer, open that up, is it there? Someone take it?
There you go.
Old school. There you go.
Make you put a couple more things in your hand.
Just to orient, so this is the intersection of Rhodes and Matilda Avenue. We'll call that west. This is the current terminus of Matilda Avenue east at a cul-de-sac. First Avenue, of course, is down here. And this is the current terminus of J Lane at a temporary cul-de-sac, and then I believe that's Mount Nittany Terrace Lane. So the development area today is in meadow grass cover, about half of it, and half of it in forest cover. And I say reintroduction because this proposal was actually approved by the township in 2008. And this is virtually similar to that proposal in terms of the street arrangement, which is infill Matilda Avenue, the missing link, a further extension of J Lane to a permanent cul-de-sac location, both streets connected by Stella Way. That was in the 2008 proposal. That proposal consisted of 52 residential lots. This proposal consists of 50. Why? Because of some adjustments to accord with current ordinances, including stormwater management, et cetera. So the adjustments are fairly minor in nature. The 2008 proposal was a condominium proposal, so 52 lots on several tracts of land created by the public street right-of-way bisections. This proposal is different. These are proposed as in-fee simple lots. And we're here tonight just to introduce this as a courtesy. Actual design planning is underway and will be before you in the future to ask for input and decision. Zoning for this parcel is R1, single-family residential. Permitted uses, of course, include single-family with an 8,500 square foot minimum lot area. 49 of these lots I'll call conventional lots, all at 8,500 square foot minimum. There's actually two sizes. We'll call them small and medium for convenience. The small 22 lots at 8,500 square feet, and the medium 27 lots at 10,400 square foot each. And these are all approximate values. All the lot sizes vary based upon the curving street right-of-way. One proposed estate lot, a larger lot at about 3 acres. The street section is two 11-foot lanes with low-profile curbing. Classification is a local street. Sidewalks on both sides, 5 foot. Utility service, all utilities are present at the property, including sewer. Water is very convenient because College Township Water Authority already has an 8-inch water main extended through the property along the Matilda Avenue right-of-way here. Otherwise, electric, natural gas points of connections to the existing street interfaces. I just want to touch on parking. Your parking requirements are 2 spaces per dwelling unit as a base, and then a half a space per home is spillover parking. So call it 2.5 required spaces per 50 units is 125 spaces. Each lot consists of a 17-foot wide driveway that's 20 feet long beyond street right-of-way. Each house has a 2-car garage. Based upon the particulars of ordinance, and each single-family home provides at least 2 off-street parking spaces. Most provide 3. In addition, on-street parking is proposed for spillover and visitor in this area with parking bump outs comprising 7 total spaces. So the proposal has about 135 spaces against the 125 required. Stormwater management, the ordinance requirements have increased since 2008, is proposed on lot in the form of 2 surface basins in this area, and that would be in common open space. And then also an off-lot proposal, which is on Lower Rhodes Lane. It's out of your view right now. That off-lot proposal is an existing lot that was part of an earlier subdivision, I believe, Mountain Indian Terrace Section 3, this subdivision, and contains an existing stormwater management basin that's in perhaps adequate shape. It's not in very good shape. So the proposal, the part of the development proposal, is potentially to acquire that lot and reconstruct that stormwater basin, enlarge it, so that it would provide stormwater management for a portion of Mountain Nittany Manor, and also continue to provide stormwater management for the lower existing development, all under common ownership of the HOA of Mountain Nittany Manor. So larger, better, and then it would be brought forward to accord with your current ordinances. The stormwater management, just briefly, consists of rate and volume control. Rate control is simply stated, large pipes in, water in fast, water out slow, and a volume to manage that. Volume controls capture of a certain volume of each stormwater event and holding it on site for infiltration into the substrate. And that does 2 things. It helps control downstream nuisance issues with rainfall, and also helps with aquifer recharge. The parkland and open space obligation for 50 proposed lots is 2 acres to require parkland and open space. And this graphic shows the start of that conversation, which is a proposal to allocate some of the stormwater management area as parkland. Permitted is 15% of that total area per ordinance. That's about 0.3 acres. And possibly offer this area in green as an adjunct or addition to the existing township park located in this area. And that's about 0.77 acres, with the balance currently proposed to be fee in lieu at your discretion. Obviously, we're very open to input from everybody, including the Parks and Rec Commission and your Planning Commission. I'll be before your Planning Commission in a few weeks. The timing of this had you placed first. And then we anticipate submitting a preliminary plan for the overall development sometime in the month of July. So tonight's informal. We'll be happy to answer any questions you have or take any comments that you could offer.
Okay, thanks. All right, we'll start out with Tracy.
Can we come back to me?
Okay, we'll come back to you. You want to go to Rich?
Sure. No, I appreciate always appreciate a sketch plan. We say that, and then, I don't know whether staff's influencing that, or design professionals in the field are seeing the benefit of that, but I really appreciate it. As we work through, I think I've talked about this project, or this piece of land 2 or 3 times over my term and everything, and this plan looks like the most feasible that I've seen. I think it identifies that there is a shortage of R1 fee simple housing land in College Township, and this appears to get us there, so I'm excited about that. The stormwater, I'll defer to others that have better on that. Same with the utilities, working through those to make sure that those support don't deter from the traffic. I think that the road network appears to be sufficient that shouldn't increase. I mean, it's going to increase, but it appears able to handle it, and if not, we'll make it so. So, in general, I like the direction we're headed.
Okay. Susan?
Not too many questions. I appreciate the bump outs for the additional overflow parking. That'll make traffic flow in that area much nicer for people who are visiting. I had a question. You mentioned part of that possibly designated parkland might also be used for stormwater management? Did I hear that correctly?
Yeah.
That's correct. Your ordinance allows 15% of the total obligation to be cross-used as stormwater management, and there's other criteria associated with that. The vision, in this case, would not be the basin area itself. These are
Right.
infiltration basins. It would be the fringe area, whether that may be appropriate for walking paths.
Right, and so that was my question. On the stormwater management, you already have the 2 areas inside the development, and then redoing the stormwater basin, the collection basin off-site a little further down. What would be the purpose of that? It's just a question for me.
The off-site location?
In the park area, just
As open space?
as stormwater management. You already seem to have the stormwater management plan in place. It sounds like additional stormwater management?
No, it's not additional.
Okay.
First of all, your ordinance is more strict than it was.
Okay.
So I guess in that respect, it is additional. It all translates to required volume to manage that stormwater. And there was not enough space on site, or it could be better and higher use on site, and the lower area was available. And there were lots of suggestions made by lots of people, but it seems to solve a couple of potential issues
Okay,
all at once.
thank you.
Yeah, my question was just around the stormwater management, and then this will, just want to confirm, this will connect that Mitchell Avenue the whole way through that now, right? That's the
correct.
intent.
That's
Okay.
correct. Yes.
All right. Eric?
Yeah, Michael, I was around in 2008 when we spent probably 6 months in this room on this plan with Kent Baker. I forget, it wasn't Keller, though.
No, it wasn't, but I was in the room with you.
All right. So you're going to hear some of the same things from me that we talked about in the challenges in 2008. But first, just the micro comments regarding the plan itself. The Phase 2 Mount Nittany stormwater, existing Phase 2 Mount Nittany Terrace stormwater detention pond, which is off the map. You're talking about the one at the corner of Bush Avenue and Matilda? Yeah, it's in need of some updating. I believe, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, have they formed has Phase 2 formed a homeowners association?
I don't know.
Yeah, I think it's,
We will.
okay.
We will have a homeowners association that will manage the stormwater facilities.
Okay, when you say we, you're talking about this association?
This will have its own
Okay.
homeowners association. Everybody applies a lot.
Yeah, I'm talking about the previous the one who you're going to buy it from, or whatever you're going to do, acquire it from. That's Phase 2 of Mount Nittany. So this would be Phase 3 or 4 or whatever. So the plan is to acquire that from the homeowners association, upgrade it, and then use it to accommodate stormwater for both what it's doing right now, and this?
So I want to make sure we're in the same place. The off-site location is at the lower end of what I'll call the road's lane missing link.
Okay, that's the one you're going to acquire?
Yes.
Okay, I was confusing it with the one that's
Sorry.
also in rough shape.
Yeah, next to it.
That's, yeah, it's off Bush Avenue. Okay, that answers that question. The parkland, and this is why you're here, just for these big picture type comments, but I suspect you're going to hear this from Park and Rec also. The proposed property that's immediately adjacent to the park is going to be the most desirable, for obvious reasons. So if I'm on Park and Rec, I would ask for all of the parkland to be there. That's my starting point, for obvious reasons. Apparently, the way you have it laid out is not enough, and that's why you want to use 15% of the stormwater plus some fee in lieu. Do I understand that correctly?
Yeah, that's correct, and that's really driven by the road connection, so let's call that number one in the
Okay, I'm going
construct.
to get to that.
Okay.
So,
But quickly, the lot depths then are driven by your minimum lot sizes, so that area was kind of what was left over in that area joining your existing.
all right. And you did say minimum lot sizes, which is the developer's choice.
Correct,
So just to be clear, it's driven by a choice that the developer made.
correct.
So, and I'm just pointing this out because, you know, this is fair game at the sketch plan meeting, so that everybody understands that the township hasn't boxed you into this. You know, you made choices to go with 8,500 feet. So then, in regards to that, if we could get that back up there, is that why the proposed green area is narrower than the adjacent existing park? In other words, if you donate that property adjacent, which is, it's a good, I think Park and Rec's going to like that, but it necks down. I'm assuming that's because you have different shaped houses now with the smaller lots pushing the setback farther?
Well, all driven by, that's not small lots, minimum lot size, minimum required
Right.
lot size. So that drives a minimum required depth with a minimum required
Right.
frontage.
But again, the minimum required is your choice.
Well, there is no choice with minimum, that's the baseline. So
But I mean, you've chose to subdivide.
In that
the
area,
minimum.
yes, sir.
That's my point.
Yes.
And so by making that choice, you've driven the back of the property line back farther, which necks down the.
As a result, yes.
Yeah, so this is, I don't have, you know, this is the business end of it is yours, so I'm just talking philosophically, it would be better if you had some more room, and I assume you don't, to widen that a little bit. I assume it's right at the setback requirement right now, and that's why it's narrow, and then you wouldn't have to supplement it as much with the stormwater and the fee in lieu. I assume you've already thought about that. I assume that's as wide as it can possibly be, the green piece. But if you haven't and it can be wider, then that would be my suggestion.
Okay.
I think it would be more attractive if you're trying to get something that us and Planning Commission will, as you know, parkland's a sensitive issue with us. We've had a lot of discussions in this room about this. Now, big picture comments, as quick as I can. As you know, I was part of this, and most all of the discussion and debate and deference from one meeting to the other is because we had a room full of folks from Matilda and First Avenue and the surrounding neighborhoods who were worried about the traffic impact, because all 50 lots and all 100 cars or whatever are going to have to, it's a very car-centric development because you can't walk to anywhere from there. It isn't adjacent to jobs and employment, you know, and that kind of stuff. So you're going to generate more traffic, so they were very sensitive to that, rightly so. A lot of the folks in the room were worried about the width and the travel lanes on Matilda that will be feeding folks onto. And of course, backtracking on J Lane, and of course, I don't have to tell you about, you know, First Avenue. In 2008, we weren't that far away from the unfortunate incident that generated that long traffic impact, traffic mitigating, traffic calming study. So we were all still a little sore from that. So the reason for all of that is, as you recall, staff was pushing for the connection to Matilda to line up with Barnes, so that traffic using First Avenue, traffic traveling down to First Avenue to go into campus or wherever, wouldn't necessarily have to travel Matilda. Because the thought was, particularly from the folks who live on existing Matilda, is that they may just keep going down Matilda to Nixon, you know, and in that way. And they were justifiably concerned, because you know what existing Matilda looks like. My recollection from 15 years ago was that most of the objection from the engineering firm at the time was the grade they would have to traverse in order to line up with Barnes Lane. And that's why the connector was pushed to the right. What would that be? To the east, northeast?
We do have an aerial map.
Yeah, so we can see Barnes
That might
Lane,
be
yeah.
helpful.
And so what I'm talking about is that we spent a lot of time on this, and that's why I'm bringing it up. I'm sorry, it's, I was saying Barnes Lane, Rhodes Lane.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I see what you're saying.
So the connection, we can go back to the engineered drawing.
Go back to the other one now?
Yeah, because you want to see the overlay, right, of the streets. Is that what you're saying, Eric?
Yeah.
Of the proposed streets.
So what staff and planning commission and council were pushing for back then was for that blue vertical line to be shifted about 4 lots over so that it was a direct shot down to First Avenue, therefore not requiring all that local traffic to be dumped on Matilda and potentially to the left and then down on First Avenue. My recollection was that that was a much tougher construct for various reasons. The reason I'm bringing it up is that earlier you mentioned the parkland, the length of the parkland is constricted, is hampered. You can't be any longer that green parkland can't be any longer because you got that street there. But my point is that was the developer's choice to put the street there, which was not the preference of the township, which was to align it with, is it Rhodes Lane?
It's Rhodes Lane.
Rhodes
yes.
Lane.
Yes.
And if that were the case, then that would open up, you know, potential option for more contiguous parkland. And I'm just pointing this out as part of the sketch plan discussion, you know, as much for these folks as for you.
Yet, and I understand everything's open for discussion on reapproval, yet the original plan did depict Stella in that location.
I understand, we eventually settled on that through many months of back and forth and discussion, but, you know, it's a new sketch plan. You know, if it wasn't an issue with grade, and you're just working backwards from the old plan, I'm bringing it up now because it's still a valid concern. The folks on Matilda aren't going to change. They haven't changed. I'll guarantee you when we get to the land development plan, those folks are going to feel the same way as they did back then. They weren't particularly happy with this. They won't be particularly happy with it again.
Understood. The connection from Stella to Matilda to the east is shown under the notion that that would be a preferential connection. If not, that's not necessary to support the development. Of course, that would divert traffic to the west to get out somewhere else.
And you know where that discussion went?
Yes.
Because that leads to the other big picture item here was, at the time, because of this and because of the inability to really direct the traffic anywhere other than spreading it out through the neighborhood streets, whether it's J, Matilda, First Avenue, and of course we were still very sensitive to First Avenue, was the Bush Avenue discussion, which is more a discussion for us. That if, you know, right off to the right of the map there is Bush Avenue, and if the township or the township and the developer or somebody could find a way for the missing piece of Bush Avenue to be constructed, then it takes the heat off a lot of the issues on Matilda, First Avenue, J Lane. I mean, that's like, you know, that's the silver bullet, really. That's outside of total control by the developer. But to wrap these comments up, I think anything that can be shown on the plan that would mitigate some of the things that I brought up here, you know, the concerns that from 15 years ago that are still legit, and moving us towards a solution with Bush Avenue will be helpful.
So to recap what you said, the notion then, or the desire then, was shifting Stella to the east, Plan East.
So
aligning
it's directly aligned with roads.
Then continue construction beyond roads for the missing link of roads. down to-
No. Yeah, you got the first part right, because I think that would help the uncomfortableness with directing the traffic onto Matilda. First, it's going to have to travel some section of the new Matilda, and then it's either going to take a right on roads, or the concern was continue on down Matilda and then make the right. And that road is not really conducive to any more traffic.
And I'm not arguing, I'm just observing that shift would still allow for the preferential choice, either continue straight on roads or left on Matilda,
Yeah,
depending on where you were going.
And I understand, but once you make the left onto Matilda, you're more inclined to continue onto Matilda versus just continuing straight down Stella onto roads. It's just human nature. So
I'm not sure that could be addressed with a traffic study, for example, in terms of that preference. I hear what you're saying. So that I know what to do, though. Should we re-examine the gradient of this possibility and report that back to you?
Well,
Well, I mean, maybe we would let council weigh in on your suggestion to answer his question, you know, if the rest of council is amenable to that. Folks, do you have any reply to what Eric's suggesting on that shift with that roads connection? You're calling that one Stella, right? And then so it would be Stella to Roads is what you're saying.
Stella Way, yes.
or just the missing link of roads.
Yeah. Anybody have anything to say to that?
I think Eric's point is well taken. A straight shot down from First Ave there will be less traffic on Matilda, just it's the goat path.
Do you have anything, Rich?
Yeah, I think we're picking which one is gonna get the traffic, and I think there's sensitivity on all of them with that. In moving Stella to line up with roads, I see that you're not getting as much of the, you know, the tail end of the, when you move all the traffic from the leftmost, I guess that would be, what are they, Plan West, they would move over, and then they have two options at that point in which to go. And I don't know that roads is that much better than Matilda. Full disclosure, I travel this fairly often to the house that's being surrounded there by the new development.
How do you leave?
Huh?
How do you leave?
I use Matilda. I go to and return from all
Are
along
you going
Matilda.
south, is that why?
What's that again?
Are you heading south, is that why you use Matilda, or is it some other preference?
Yeah, probably.
South.
Headed towards, yeah,
If you were
Hills
going
Plaza.
north, would you use roads first?
Yes, I have, actually, yes, I have.
I think that's gonna drive the preference, it's your destination, and it's gonna be a north-south choice.
Right.
I don't know if I really agree with whether or not it's straight or you have to make a turn into stop condition. And there's no way to quantify that, it's very subjective.
No, there isn't, and I agree, but it was the consensus of this entire room over a 3-month, very deliberate period that involved a lot of input from residents in that area, and I'm just sharing that with you now.
Was that the residents' preference as well?
Oh, absolutely, that was one of the driving factors behind council pushing until we couldn't push anymore, or decided not to push anymore on Stella. And my recollection was that this was a much easier build. From a developer standpoint, it didn't have anything to do with traffic flow other than that this was just easier to build the road in that location versus.
I don't think I agree with that. This road is very steep. It does meet your criteria, but barely just. It's quite a vertical transition down. I don't know about the other alignment, if that's steeper. And in fact, if that were pursued, we might have to come back and ask for relaxation of your maximum grade criteria, but.
And we may have been through that. And that, I'm just pointing, it's a sketch plan, so I'm just providing everyone, including fellow council members, with a heads up.
Rich, yes.
Just to follow up, that I respect what was discussed 15 years ago, but a lot's changed on the other end of this development in the past 15 years, such that I think there's a different feel.
Well, yeah, and one of the things that there's a lot more development to the right of that, and a lot more of it backtracking down First Avenue. You know, so you have even more intense use of First Avenue now than you did 15 years ago. So
Right.
that's one of the reasons I'm bringing it up, is that there's more traffic heading south or left on First Avenue than there was because of Phase 1 and Phase 2 built out. Phase 2 wasn't even built when this was in place. The infrastructure was in there, but all the houses weren't built and sold, and Matilda wasn't built.
So we'll report this back to the developer, but it sounds like one piece of information we need to come back with is gradient of the, we'll call it the 2008 preferred alignment, to report that to you as to whether it's feasible to meet your ordinance. That's
Okay.
something we can do.
Good. Tracy, you have an opportunity to talk to anything?
Oh, well, I was just wondering, you had said that it went from 52 to 50. What was the reasoning again for?
You know, we didn't sit and analyze it both ways. We built it back up in accordance with the current ordinance, so I suspect it's just your current ordinance requirements, larger stormwater areas, et cetera. Or there would have been 52. It's a good question.
Thank you.
I wanted to just clarify on that Rhodes Lane corner in Matilda, what's an existing home versus proposed right there? What's the current existing home? Where's that end?
These three are proposed, so that would be the current intersection, Stella to Matilda. At this intersection, these four are existing.
All right. Okay, so, yeah, I mean, I see your point on moving that over, but if I'm that person that owns that house there, I'd probably rather see the new road be built out where there's not houses existing yet.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Those two folks versus everybody else on that
Yeah.
street who would, but just to be clear, there is an existing easement there.
Is there?
There is, yes.
Okay.
Well, actually, it's part of the
It's
property.
part of the property.
Yeah, it's in fee.
But it's an easement.
It could be a street right of way, yes. It's actually part of the base lot, though. There's no easement on it right now. It's part of the overall property.
But again, to the
There's property
point,
lines there.
the point is, you know, we're basing this, I mean, I think we need to talk to the current residents. It was 15 years ago. I respect that, you know, that's what 15 years ago folks had wanted, but lots changed in 15 years, to Rich's point. So there could be a little bit of a different opinion.
No doubt.
Yeah.
But when you bring a sketch plan up that was the same thing that we saw 15 years ago, I think it's appropriate to share with the developer ahead of time, before he goes into an engineered land development plan, what some of the pushback was and what some of the discussion, protracted and prolonged discussion points over many months were.
Yeah, I don't disagree. Okay.
So the connection, though, the completion of Matilda, that still, in and to itself, would be a preference. Is that correct?
I don't have any issues with that.
Yeah, through street.
You mean connecting the two Matildas?
Right.
Yeah, no, I think that was always in the cards.
Okay. Anything else?
We will, when the land development plan does come in, we always send neighboring property owners an announcement of when it'll be at PC, so, and then we post the property, so I'm sure the neighbors will be well aware when the subdivision is underway.
Okay, thank you.
Real quick, and before you leave, Michael, you're going to be going to PC with this same sketch plan in a couple of weeks?
That was the original plan, but it almost sounds like this issue needs to be attended to. And I'm trying to figure out how best to approach
Well,
that.
but I'm only one person, but I'm just revisit, maybe try to see what it was that the developer was so opposed to aligning Stella directly with that. And
Yeah, we may actually be able to assist if the intent is to evaluate that prior to jumping off into that particular project or that element. We may have some documentation in the file that speaks to the issue 15 years ago relative to the alignment that ultimately was chosen, the evaluation that may or may not have taken place relative to the alignment with roads. So I would encourage you to get with Lindsay, work with staff to see what we may have, the developer may have materials as well. I think before there's a full-fledged effort to seriously reevaluate, perhaps just an examination of the existing documentation may in fact yield an answer.
Yeah, a call to Kent might
Or
yield an
even
answer.
a call to former engineer, Mr. Baker.
I mean, he was the one, that the plan came in with no Stella. He was the one who pushed very hard for that connector and pushed hard for it to be where it was. The ultimate compromise was Stella, but Stella where it was easier to build.
What about no Stella?
Yeah, I know you are. You didn't want Stella 15 years ago, and
It's interesting. Now, the cul-de-sac length is problematic. We need a waiver.
but to make all those people on J Lane backtrack all the way to Bush where they can't go,
Well-
then they're all the way to Struble, and then you've got issues.
True, but the preferential choice is the issue, so that would eliminate half the population making that preferential choice at Rhodes and Matilda. Just an observation.
And maybe you get some Bush Ave improvements out of that.
Well, that was a lot, that was a large part of the discussion. And
Yeah.
council was very hot on the Bush Avenue extension as soon as that plan was approved, and when after 5 years it expired, you know, the urgency to move on Bush Avenue started to, but now the Bush Avenue urgency needs to be raised, and that's our issue more than it is yours.
Understood?
But it certainly takes care of some of the issues then that we lay on you because Bush Avenue isn't in place.
You got something, Rich?
Well, I was just gonna say, I'm a supporter of the Stella or Rhodes, take your pick, but from a public safety standpoint, having that long stretch without a secondary means to
And
get.
that's why that's why we had staff.
Right, like, I'm comfortable with Stella as shown as opposed to Rhodes, but I'm open to reasons for either, but the no Stella is not an option for me personally. I'll just throw that out.
It wasn't for the township 15 years ago either, as you'll find out when you review the logs.
Has there been any work to extend Bush Avenue? I know we've talked about that for a long time.
Is that something you can bring up on the map since we're talking about it right now, please? Yeah.
Whoops, let me go.
And so the extension, if you could, the extension you're speaking to, Eric, is what exactly?
Well, you'd have to scroll the map down a little bit.
Okay.
I have to share it so that the Zoom people can see it.
Oh,
Okay.
all right, there you go.
Where's which one? Oh, can you see Bush there?
Yeah, we can
Can
see
you
it.
drag the map down a little?
Yep. Want it a little bigger, or we good?
A little zoom would be good, yeah. You got it in the center.
Now drag it down more.
Yeah,
Keep going,
okay,
keep going.
okay.
Yeah, there's been
Yeah.
a lot of discussion to come down to that light past center concrete
Yeah. How
over the years, but, you know, there's gonna be right of way required from, I think, Bob Poole and Brad Karch on that, Adam? Is that
That's
right?
correct.
Yeah, so, I didn't know where that stood, because if Bush Avenue were to go through there, then I think everybody's just gonna go down to Bush.
Right to a red light.
Yes, and it solves a lot of the things that we were talking about, and it's going to make the people on First Avenue a lot happier and First Avenue a lot safer.
Right.
Adam, we did make a little bit of progress on that in the past 15 years.
Well, we did. I believe There was and is a note on that parcel on the approved plan.
Right, when we subdivided, we
What I
added it.
don't know whether or not it was time limited.
Yeah,
And it may have been. On the other hand, in that particular area on this parcel, which is, it's the one across from the concrete facility, on a portion of the former Rutgers Nice site. There has not been any new development that has occurred there in the last 15 years. So we'd have to re-examine the note on that approved plan to make a determination as to whether or not it's still valid. If it was time limited as a note in the plan, we'd have to make some inquiries as to whether or not there's feasibility to reinstitute that.
right, just as I recall, we had some subdivision activity and there was renewed discussion about that connection and everything, so
the
we
top
might want
part.
to check that, yes.
And the other challenge we ran into is even with that easement or right-of-way, it still didn't line up for a direct.
It wasn't perfect, yeah.
Right, there would still require some easement on the center concrete or an offset of Bush Avenue and then a reconnect down below. So complicated things. But the point is, Bush Avenue extension, you probably wouldn't have had, if we had Bush Avenue extension, you probably wouldn't have had township engineer pushing for Stella. So they're kind of, tied together. So to the extent that we can, either collectively or on our own, advance the Bush Avenue project simultaneous with this, it takes a lot of the stress and a lot of the angst off of the traffic impact on First Avenue, Matilda.
But it doesn't address the public safety issue.
I was going to say, it doesn't solve the public safety concern for me on that personally.
I don't share that concern, so I was hoping you guys could elaborate on why that's such a concern.
Well, if you take the Stella out, where's your first point of connection is down at Bush. and
I
then-
may have overstated that, but clearly without Bush, Stella is absolutely necessary. It may
Yes,
still be
yes.
necessary with Bush.
Right,
but
ideal.
That's why the township staff was not willing to give on the Stella issue.
Right. Plus, from a developer standpoint, Stella doesn't totally hurt them because they get to have driveways off of the.
But the specific answer to your question is cul-de-sac length. That's the issue.
Yeah.
Without a s-
And Lindsay and/or Mark may be able to speak to the actual, per our ordinance, what our cul-de-sac length maximums are.
Is it 650 or 700?
750.
750? I was getting there.
So you're saying that would make that an ultra-long cul-de-sac?
Yes.
749.5 feet.
Yes.
In an emergency, it would be
From
hard to
Stella.
evacuate that whole area.
Oh, from
Right.
Stella?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
That's what I'm thinking.
Yes.
Like a fire or something
Everybody
like that.
hear that?
What's that?
The distance from Stella to the end of the cul-de-sac
750.
is 749.5.
Safety factor.
Well played.
Okay, and the other residual benefit to Stella moving is the parkland option.
I don't know, I kind of like that Stella moving over now I
I
look
mean,
at
if you
it.
move Stella over, you can extend the parkland, theoretically, there's concept plans here, with the, just working in concept, you extend the parkland, you don't need the,
I mean, ultimately, I would love that Stella didn't exist like they did, but I see why you guys are saying that it has to have a point, right, on the Stella. I absolutely agree with that connector on that.
And that extension's true to a degree, but we're still required to provide stormwater management, so we're gonna split the basins with the realignment, which means one shifts to the east of necessity.
Right.
And I think the challenge is grade, potentially, have to take a look at that. Also squeezing that road between those two existing lots, where it's already very steep, that might be interesting. Maybe that was some of the challenge then, I don't know. That's something we'll look at or review.
Okay, so you got some stuff to chew on, right, and some feedback, thanks. I think we We stepped on that a couple times, didn't we, for you? All right. Okay,
Appreciate it.
thank
very
you,
much.
thank you, Michael. Okay, moving on to reports. Manager's update.
Yes, I probably should defer this to the assistant manager, but we're going to be, with respect to the Dale Summit, the remand clarification memo was forwarded to PC, and they took that up this past Tuesday. And I'm sure that we'll have a report here later from our liaison relative to that. With respect to solar power purchasing, yet again, scheduled meeting has been delayed. Anticipated receipt of actual agreements is now, is it August? I can't remember.
We may
if they
see it
said
as,
July or
we may
August.
see it as early as July. And that's kind of the latest, July sometime.
All right, July, very good. No news on path to campus at this point. Relative under 21-06, grant application had been withdrawn by the developer relative to the Nittany Mall. And we do have, tonight we're going to be discussing some PC questions surrounding the remand on attainable housing. So that is the update. We'll be happy to try to answer any questions.
Any questions for the manager? Okay. All right, we'll move on to COG Regional County Liaison Reports. Anybody have anything to report from committee attendance, COG meetings? You got anything,
Public
Susan?
safety was canceled.
Okay.
Human resources canceled.
Eric?
Should have cast.
Rich?
Finance occurred before our last meeting, which I was not here for, but we just continue on getting better.
Yeah, so I had two. I had a Climate Action Sustainability Committee meeting, which was mostly consisted of one item that carried over to executive. I'll talk about in executive. And then the other things were updates on work activities. That was the major items that include the cap and things like that. I'll give you some more details further. But I did want to talk mostly to the if I can find it in executive. So what carried over to the executive was what we are sending forth to the COG is the update to the agreement with the Center Region Collection Agency for trash. So as part of the Berg-Myers approval, we had to update that, and that'll come through in through COG as far as the billing that the Center Region does for that, the recycling authority. Also, so there was a lengthy executive session, which you guys should see some things that come forth on that. And there was lengthy discussion on the update to, which is a resolution, the update to the language in the general form on the executive director, and how, that is appointed and so on and so forth. So you guys see that coming through. I didn't know if you wanted to add anything, Adam. You did attend that executive.
No, a lot of it was very, there were a lot of weeds involved.
A lot of weeds. That's the high points on that. Any other questions? Okay. PC, other committee reports?
Yeah, we heard the Penn State Beaver Stadium renovation report on Tuesday night. We spent maybe 90 minutes on form-based code. I think it's going to be a slow process, but we're making progress. Lastly, I come up with an idea that maybe we could find somebody out in the township that is a motivational speaker, and they could come in and talk to the planning commission and maybe, help our energy, our enthusiasm, maybe sharpen our focus. I reached out to several members of the planning commission, and the response was lackluster at best. And I made that.
You knew that was coming.
I was just waiting for it.
I wrote that all down in my minutes.
You knew that was coming.
Mr. Schulte, did you want to say anything? Give the opportunity.
Sure. I'm going to give you people a chance to ask any questions you might have, if nothing else. Okay. Our June meeting is our traditional walk around. We concentrated this year on 3 of the parks that have a portion of either Slab Cabin or Spring Creek going through it, and what we as Parks and Recreation representatives should be watching out for with regard to the streams that are what's good for the streams. Obviously, our primary focus is people using the streams, okay? But in the sense that a healthy stream makes it better for the people to use, that is a thing to look forward to and a thing to work on. The takeaways were that we should avoid silt and erosion covering the stream, make the stream stabilized so that the stream is deeper and more active and we have happier fish. Okay, so that was a major takeaway. So the meeting was attended by Ms. Trainer, okay, and our full committee as it currently stands, and in fact we are, I'll mention again, we are short a committee member right now, and got a question on another portion of that. And just want to reiterate that it'd be easier if we had our full staff there to be dedicated to watching out for the parks and doing our reporting on them. Okay. Any questions?
Any questions for the chair of Parks and Rec?
I have one. First,
I'm just going to go ahead.
while you're up there, this for staff, since we saw a sketch plan tonight and he referenced Park and Rec, does Park and Rec see sketch plans, or do they only see them once they're preliminary finals?
They see the preliminary final.
So they won't see what we
And
saw.
that's problematic, obviously.
Well, that's why I'm asking, is they're asking for sketch plan and high-level input on on their combination of meeting that. It seems like Park and Rec should weigh in at this step before they go into an engineered drawing.
And we would appreciate that very much. We really, really would. The sooner we can get in front of us and offer comment, the better it is for all involved. Before the developer starts spending beaucoup bucks on the details, okay?
If there's a Park and Rec issue,
And
you know,
this one obviously
where they're asking
does.
for input on, we should be getting input from you
Obviously.
on that.
Yeah, I mean, I would appreciate it. I just wanted to add to that, right, to have that Park and Rec recommendation, you know, at the sketch plan state, right? You know, if they're saying, oh, you know, you should never accept a fee in lieu, right?
I want to know that now.
Yeah,
On this
exactly.
site, but while we can still affect
Exactly.
the engineered plan.
This is my first, actually shouldn't say that. I tried to review the plan that was in the published packet for tonight's meeting, okay? And it was very difficult to see, observe, and figure out, A, where it was, B, was there any parkland, all those things. So, based on the limited amount of information I was able to garner from your packet, okay, as we published, and what I heard tonight, number one takeaway, you're adding 50 new families. Those families are going to present a demand upon our parks system, okay? By ordinance, okay, there should be 2 acres of parkland added to our system to accommodate the needs of those 50 new families, okay? I believe the developer said he was only allocating 0.77 acre.
And the rest was going to be made up by fee in lieu and some percentage of
The
stormwater.
Okay,
That's a
towards the stormwater, the devil's in the details. If you look at the ordinance, the goal of that particular 15% thing is that the base of the stormwater basin, okay, is basically a playable surface. Okay, he's talking about, oh, you can make a walking path around the outside. That's not how the ordinance is designed to take that input. So that's the information that I was able to garner from the packet and from what I heard tonight.
That's safe. Appreciate it.
And yes, please, it would be helpful, this is, if you happen to talk to the developer, if they identify on the drawing clearly identify on the drawing what they are suggesting be dedicated as parkland, okay? Along with the topographical attributes of that parcel, because slope is a component of the parkland dedication ordinance. Thank you.
Thanks. Okay. Good. All right, let's move on to DEIB.
Reported pretty much everything at the first meeting of the month, so I have no additional report this evening.
Okay. Thanks.
Can you ask if anybody's going to that conference?
Oh, yeah. Jen, I don't have the date right off
It's
my
on
fingertips.
Tuesday, the 20th, I think.
Yes.
Or Wednesday, the 20th.
The diversity conference. I know Jen had pushed out an email about that. I wasn't sure if we had others who were planning on attending.
I know,
I think we have.
Susan and Rich and Eric cannot go. Dustin, you cannot go.
No.
Tracy?
I cannot go.
Okay,
Work
that's
trip.
good to know, thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Jen.
Okay. And council members, please, just if you have a change to that, just give it to Jen as quick as possible. Okay, so we'll move on to this evening's consent agenda. All right, the consent agenda consists of the following: CA1 and the minutes and approval of our June 6, 2024 regular meeting, the June 12, 2024 special meeting that happened for capital improvement plan. CA2 is the correspondence receipt and approval of a letter from the Center County Association of Realtors dated May 29, 2024 regarding 2023 Center Region Rental Housing and Building Safety Code. B is an email from Mid-State Literacy Council dated June 10th regarding annual MSLC Spelling Bee sponsorship. C is a letter from Stahl Schaefer Engineering dated June 7th regarding time extension to the October 1st, 2024 for the indoor practice air supported structure preliminary final land development plan. D is an email from Susan Buda dated June 12th regarding new housing development proposal. CA3 is the action item approval of project 24-03, the street resurfacing project awarded to Gleno Hawbaker Inc., who was the lowest bidder in the amount of $241,535. Do any members of the council wish to pull any of those items?
CA2D.
CA2D.
CA2B?
B? Anyone else? Okay, do we have a motion to approve the consent agenda minus CA2B and D?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, and we have none opposed, unanimous. All right, let's talk, who wants to go first? D? Who pulled D?
I did.
All right.
This will be quick. The reviews that she's referring to, Ms. Buda, correct me if I'm wrong, but most of them, if not all of those, are exercised or incorporated in the wellhead protection ordinance. In other words, when somebody develops in proximity to the wellheads, all of those things are taken into consideration.
That's correct. Staff ends up making final comments relative to those matters, but that is done in conjunction and in cooperation with the College Township Water Authority to provide comments to staff.
Okay, so the concerns expressed in the letter are all concerns of the township, enough so that we created a wellhead protection ordinance to provide those protections within proximity of the well.
Absolutely.
And then any development that overlaps that has to abide by those regulations.
Yeah, in fact, and some of you may recall, a number of years ago, the DEP minimum requirement for a Zone 1 area, which is a wellhead protection area minimum, is a 400-foot radius around the wellhead. Working with the hydrogeologist for the Water Authority at that time, and as is presently, which is Dr. Richard Perzak, who is mentioned in this particular piece of correspondence, we extended that to 1,200 feet. So in addition to meeting the minimum requirements, we've actually substantially increased that wellhead protection area around that particular source of water. So, but yes, we took the extra step, if you will, of ensuring protection of that water resource.
So legitimate concerns, the good news is we're on it, and have been on it for some time.
Okay, CA2B.
Yeah, let's see here. Ms. Schroeder is asking if we would like to make a donation to the fundraiser, which is a spelling bee for the Mid-State Literacy Council. And she proposed as an example, Patton Township's $500 donation. They have I guess about $200,000 budget, and they have no external funding, so they're all relying on donation and fundraising. So is that something we would like to do?
Council members, thoughts?
I have no objection because our company also sponsors.
Okay. I have no objections. So are we thinking the $500?
Yeah.
Or authorize the manager? Okay. So we probably should do that as a separate motion, right? Yeah. So let's, we'll hear a motion for that.
I move that we authorize the manager to make a $500 worker bee donation to the Mid-State Literacy Council's Spelling Bee fundraiser.
I second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Do we have any
Now, that was
opposed?
the manager's personal money, right?
Yeah, that's right. Of his personal money.
That's what I heard from that motion. That's why I voted in favor of it quick.
Point of clarification. Not, yeah,
That's what worker bee
What am I to
refers
say to that?
He's the worker bee.
that's right. Okay, so with that, how about a motion to accept CA2D?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Okay, we are moving on.
Mr. Chair, if I could, one alibi from reports. Yeah, I'll save Ms. Trainer a written report after. I sat in for the CTIDA. Bottom line up front, much different meeting than the last time I attended the IDA. It was very enjoyable. The executive director is head over heels over the guy she replaced. And I think she did an excellent report of what is going on in the IDA. As part of it, the council liaison is usually asked to share what we're doing, so I shared about the attainable housing and the form-based code stuff, and there was interest about the finance director and the manager's temporary duty elsewhere. There was a cheer for the assistant manager. I don't know what that was about, but then there's reports from the four main committees: governance, loan, marketing, and finance. For governance, the big item was that they formalized the membership of the governance committee to be the chairs of the various committees. On the loan, there was a discussion. They have a client coming up for a balloon payment on a loan that the IDA does not control. And they deferred to the executive director to work with the new relationships that she's established with the Center County Industrial Development Council and the CBICC before taking any additional action. Finance, they moved 3 CD ladders to higher earning opportunities. There is some penalty costs for early withdrawal on that, but they did a calculation of the values and determined that it was in the best interest of the IDA. Pending any questions?
Okay, any questions?
I'd just like to say thank you for attending.
You are welcome.
Thank you.
Okay, so we're gonna move on to old business. Old business number 1 is our capital improvement plan, our program, CIP, and a resolution.
All right, so just, again, much like I do each year, this presentation at this point is as much for our audience as it is for you. We've had pretty extensive discussions on the CIP to this point. So on an annual basis, as you're well aware, College Township develops a 5-year capital improvement program, or our CIP. This is a very important planning document for the township as it outlines our proposed capital investments of $5,000 or more. That's a rough number that we use. Some are less, most are more. 5,000 or more or greater across the following categories: public works, parks and recreation, land acquisition, technology, and regional projects. As council's aware, we have been kind of going through an evolutionary process with the CIP and baking in more of your strategic vision into that document over the last couple iterations. And I anticipate that's going to continue into the next CIP and potentially the one beyond that. Just trying to make that process better and more informative to our annual budget on an each year basis. So where we're at tonight and what was provided at each of your places are updates that came out of your meeting that occurred on June 12th. That was our opportunity with council to work through in detail the draft CIP. I'm pleased to report that I was able to accommodate every revision that was talked about during that meeting, save 2. And I'm going to ask your indulgence with those 2. The first was one, I believe, Rich, that you had brought up about adding a column for the kind of next 5 years. And that is tied to projects that require financing beyond the life of the CIP. In my review, currently where we're at, I think we're okay this year to forego that. But as we talked about during our review session, I think that is an important element as we start moving into longer term financing for bigger projects. I recognize the value of incorporating that. Quite honestly, just kind of ran out of time to do that for this CIP. The second is the same issue. It was a timing issue, not a deference of the need. And it was a comment, I believe, Eric, that you had brought forward in revising the tables and graphs in that new look back section to reflect net capital costs as opposed to gross. That one's going to require a little bit of research, and again, it was a timing thing. I'm just asking of you, of council, to be okay if we hold that as part of that evolutionary process for the next CIP. With that, but otherwise, all the other revisions have been incorporated, and that's what's at your space. On an annual basis, in order to adopt the CIP as a planning document, the township is required to pass a resolution. So staff has provided draft resolution R2423 for council's consideration. And the action that we're looking for this evening is for you to review and provide any additional feedback that you may have on the revised version of the 25 to 29 CIP. And barring any substantive revisions to that final draft, staff is requesting that council move to adopt resolution R2423, accepting the 25 to 29 CIP as a planning document for College Township. With that, I'm happy to take questions.
Okay. Questions or comments? Susan, why don't you head out?
No questions, looks good. Thank you.
I don't have anything. Eric?
2, if we could get the net cost going through the course of the year so that we don't get to this point next year that we end up pushing it back another year because of the time. Because I think there's other areas where net cost would be of value, certainly to me. And I would ask for my fellow council members' indulgence here. If that plan that we looked at tonight came in before June 12th, I would be pushing for some notation of land acquisition or whatever in one of the out years of the capital plan for the Bush Avenue extension, which is already on the official map. The only reason it's not in there is we kind of lost urgency when the plan expired. And just having it in year 3 or 4 or 5 is not a commitment, because we don't have the money for it, but all it is a notation that we have elevated that now to a point where we think we're going to need to do it, so let's get it on the map. And that's a simple enough change that I would trust staff to find the appropriate place and the appropriate year based on what they think this development. Now, I understand this development could sit idle for 5 years, just like it did last time. But if we have it in the out years, then it can keep getting pushed to the out years.
That is a modification that we can actually make based on your authorization to include in this existing document. And yeah, I think it would be appropriate to year 3, year 4, maybe even just having it on the map in year 5 would be appropriate to the point that you're making.
Just get it on there. So
Anyone have
that-
any comments or questions to Eric's point?
I'm entirely comfortable with that. You know, as we talked about during our session, as you move into those out years, they become more of crystal ball. And I think that's an entirely appropriate placement for it.
The only real question then is, what is the number?
That's where I was going.
That we place in. If we're talking land acquisition, right away, acquisition, and you're talking about that acquisition right away being for non-residential property, it's probably going to need to be a significant number. And I would say you would want at least $250,000, just pulling a number completely out of the air as a starting point for discussion.
I was thinking more like $500,000, but.
And just so you know, I'm just asking for a best guess as a placeholder as a result of what we heard tonight, and we revisit it next year at this project, and then we start to zero in.
So you asking for the acquisition money or planning for the acquisition?
I'm just asking that something be
Just
added.
a different
in there.
number?
Yeah.
The actual acquisition or planning for the acquisition?
It doesn't matter to me at this point. I'm just
Just
asking
big
that.
number differences, that's all.
I think in order for it to be appropriately reflected as part of the CIP, it would need to be the actual acquisition. The planning activities surrounding that would be captured under our normal budget, or our normal budget process, yearly budget process. So I think this would actually be acquisition money.
And again, if the consensus of council is to add that, I'm comfortable with that, and it would have a corresponding narrative that attached to, kind of describe the intent of what those dollars are.
Yeah, and if years from now, when we get to it, a different council feels differently, it can fall off. I just think it's appropriate what we heard and what we're going to hear at the land development plan meeting from neighbors, that we say, hey, we put it on the plan.
Yeah, it's actually a shame that it ever fell off because it makes sense, period.
We'd be in a better position now with this plan if we were at least moving forward with it.
Well,
Even if it kept moving right.
yeah, and one of the things that we've not done a stellar job at is taking our various approved plans, long-term planning document plans.
Like the
i.e.
official map.
The official map, or the new walkability plan, ped plan kind of a thing. We have not necessarily translated those into CIP elements.
Yeah.
And I do think that as we move forward, and as Mike has suggested, as we continue to tweak our process here in the next iteration of this, that you'll see next year, we can begin to address those types of things. And I think that is just it's an advancement of the way that we are doing business in College Township.
You just keep getting better.
Yeah, thanks, Rich.
To Adam's point, those do show up as through our strategic elements. Those types of things, implementation of the official map, implementation of the PED plan, show up in the strategic planning document. It just hasn't translated into dollars in the actual CIP. No.
When we get a sketch plan, do we also look at those documents and consider them?
As they're relative to those particular parcels,
Right.
they're considered,
Yeah.
yes.
And part of the reason I brought it up is Bush Avenue is already on the official map. So it was more just trying to raise the level of urgency.
The visibility of it, for sure.
Yeah, and by putting it on the capital plan in the out years, then that's this next.
Okay. I mean, so can we amend the resolution then to include that? Do we have to?
Or can we just have a condition on?
Consensus, yeah.
Conditional,
Or
with a condition.
consensus that we, staff,
Consensus to make this particular modification, then there's really not a need to make a modification to the resolution.
Okay. Do we have a consensus? Yes. We didn't actually give you a number yet, did we?
Well, I threw one out as
Okay.
a starting point for conversation. It really doesn't matter, especially since this is gonna go in year 4 or 5, or 3, 4, or 5, whichever. And that would be the next thing that we would want to get some clarity on, would be, is year 3 more appropriate in this particular case? Or push it out the full 5 years?
whether it's in 3, 4, or 5 really doesn't matter. It's still the wish list. My thought was, when we get around to the capital improvement plan exercise next year, we will see if this plan is actually advancing
And
or
we
sitting
make
on,
the adjustment.
and adjust accordingly,
Or some other plan.
or some other plan.
And does it matter that in year 3, we have the expansion of Public Works? It's a substantial.
I mean, I'm more
It's
comfortable just
theoretical.
putting it at 5 at this point.
Yeah,
can
yeah,
always
yeah, that's
move
my
it
point. Put it
anywhere in
there.
there.
And I will say,
Right.
past practice has been for those more nebulous types of projects that have not taken shape or fully formed, we've usually put those in the furthest available out here as part of the plan. So this would likely go into year 5, but to Eric's point, each year that's reevaluated and we can move them. Again, this is a planning document, and that's a way for us to plan.
Okay.
Thanks,
So
Eric.
we've got the timing done. Now what is the number that everybody would like to see?
I'm fine with the number you threw out.
Yeah.
We trust the recommendation of our award-winning manager,
Who only gets better over time.
who only gets better over time.
Right. Eric, anything else?
Yes, when you miss a meeting, you have to take 2 meetings worth of.
Of abuse? Thank you.
Accolades.
Accolades.
Accolades. Anything else, Eric? Tracy? Okay. Rich? Did I get to you yet?
No, I'm 100%, yep.
Okay.
In a good place.
So now it's simply the matter of the resolution itself.
Yeah. I'm looking for it.
It's the very
I have it.
bottom.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mr. Chair, I'll move to adopt resolution R-24-23, accepting the 2025 to 29 CIP as a planning document for College Township.
Okay. We have a motion.
A second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Are there any opposed? I hear no opposition.
Thank you.
Motion carries unanimous. All right, on to OB2, attainable workforce housing clarifications from the Planning Commission, everybody's favorite topic.
All right. So on June 4th, the Planning Commission received the second remand regarding the study and review of the attainable housing ordinance. The remand was both an update and a response to the Planning Commission's ongoing efforts to update this ordinance. The outcome of that meeting is reflected below in this memo in a series of questions or comments that the Planning Commission is seeking further information. From the onset, of course, the goal was to develop an ordinance with incentives that were equitable. The Planning Commission took this into consideration during the update of the ordinance, but then found that the second remand was a little confusing. And the Planning Commission feels that a clearer understanding as we move forward of what council really feels is the definition of equitable, especially regarding the types of amenities and incentives that are used in this ordinance. So that was kind of the overall question philosophically that Planning Commission is answering. So as we go through those, sort of keep that in mind as well. The first question was specify what is to be waived regarding municipal fees. I put in here, the day I prepared the memo, some information that we had on file on what that may look like, waiving those fees. So over the past 8 months, the total application cost of 9 plans was $4,600. Plan review charges, that means staff time, was $9,500. And then we had the traffic impact studies, which totaled at the time $4,800, but recently have received another invoice. So that went up towards about $14,000. So with that, and in the table that you see, staff did recommend considering a cap on waiving municipal fees. So is that something that council would be up to? Maybe consider council or staff being able to waive fees up to a certain amount, maybe like $1,000, $5,000. Anything above that would have to come to council to be waived for that fee. Some unintended consequences we were thinking of, and I'm not sure how this would go, but imagine we get a large amount of these requests for these developments, and all at one time, and they all want to take advantage of that incentive, then we're waiving all of these fees just at one time. I'm not sure how likely that is, but that's something that I wanted to bring up. So with that information, how does council feel about waiving municipal fees as an incentive for workforce housing?
Okay. Susan, you want to start? Comments, your thoughts?
Yeah, I think it's reasonable to waive municipal fees, but I do agree with the cap, Lindsay.
Okay.
And that would be on a, calculating that cap, is that a per plan cap? Is that an across the board, $2,000 per plan? Is it something that's related to the scope of the plan? That would be my only question, sort of like our fee in lieu questions.
Okay, let's have that work out, all right.
You good? Yeah, I mean, the cap, are we saying like a cap for the year? Like, hey, if you get in first, you get it, or like it's just a cap per plan?
Per plan, say available to everybody.
Eric?
I agree, but I have a broader question about all of these, and maybe I misunderstood the process. As I look down through these, including that one, I was kind of looking to the Planning Commission for recommendations on these. Mm-hmm. Is this how we're going to be going forward as we move through this, is when we get to these decision points, staff and PC are going to ask council to weigh in on these?
Well, I think with more of these harder topics that we've been discussing, I think this might become the new normal with these remands sort of back and forth. But I think after this clarification tonight, the Planning Commission will work to then make a recommendation back to council.
Okay, so you understand my question?
I do, and the Planning Commission, they prepared and proposed and recommended an ordinance, so a lot of this stuff has been vetted out through the Planning Commission, but since the second remand came back, there were further clarification needed.
Yeah. If I'm on Planning Commission, I would want to be able to have a say and make a recommendation. I'll give you an example. The second question, clearly some Planning Commission members have some strong opinions on that. Mm-hmm. So I'm kind of surprised that they're asking us to weigh in when it seems like at least the more vocal members already think they know what they should do there.
Yeah, I think the fee in lieu and using hard data is something that, is in the ordinance currently, and as they proposed it, the formula is really what they're looking to ask, looking for input.
And they didn't have any thoughts on the formula?
No, they did.
That's what I thought.
Yeah, they were fine with it.
I'm sorry. I'm just adjusting to this new process.
Different.
As a former Planning Commission member, I'm having to adjust to this new back and forth process. So,
yeah, everybody is. So
okay,
it's different.
That's it. Support the.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Mm-hmm. What about you, Tracy?
I'm in support of the cap, but just you said they're looking to see if there's a cap that staff can go up to like 1,000, is that what you mentioned? And then anything over that then would have to come to council, and that's per plan, is that correct?
Per plan, yeah, that's a suggestion.
Who, in my opinion, if I may, who actually authorizes the waiver of the fee is somewhat irrelevant, and quite frankly, I think that authority should rest with council. Staff shouldn't be in line of fire relative to waiver of fees. I think that there should be a rule of thumb type of cap per plan that is contemplated and considered, and based on individual plans that come forward may dictate something more or something less. And I think that that's a decision, to be honest, that the council should be involved in making. Now, one of the things that this might change may in fact be initial submission fees. Those may, in cases where there may be attainable housing that's being developed, those initial fees may need to wait to be billed or collected, or they could be refunded. So the point here, though, is I think that there is a range of municipal fees that we have a degree of control over. These, and again, are not the most significant fees that apply to a project. That said, it is within our domain, it is within our control to be able to provide that regulatory relief in this fashion. But again, I think that it's probably most apropos that those things come from council. Ultimately, the ultimate decision on the waivers come from council.
If I may, Mr. Chair, are you talking about each plan waiver would come back to us even after this is written into the ordinance?
Yes.
For approval.
My concern there is that we're trying to simplify the development process. Some of the incentives we're giving back to the developers would be some sort of standardized process they could go through more quickly. So that would be the only. Is there a cap that we could say, this is the cap at which staff could authorize that, and then above and beyond that? That would be my only.
I think
that's the point, the cap, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, but
But I'm
you're
hearing
also
something
putting
different.
staff in a difficult position.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the ultimate authority is ours. And you're putting, why did you do this here? Why did you do that
Right.
here? Ultimately, council has, the final say on things. So I personally think I understand from potentially from an efficiency standpoint, and in business, I would probably recommend that. But in this situation in government with taxpayers' dollars, I think you got to be careful. And I think it potentially puts staff in a difficult position.
I mean, one of the other, and I'm just, I wasn't around for some of the conversation as the memo was being put together. But one of the other things, I think, it would be easy to say we tack that on, a waiver of fees onto an actual approval. That said, every plan that comes through doesn't ultimately get an approval.
Yes.
Okay, well, what do we do then? And so I think that there's a functional mechanism to how this would work. I think in theory is what is really important here for planning commission. What types of fees, what extent of fees in terms of a number would be appropriate. The actual mechanism about how it works, I do think we're going to have to tease that out a little bit.
So we had discussion earlier that we would consider waiving or working on trying to get things like sewer tap fees waived. And that would be outside. So what we're saying is we're limiting this to municipal, we're saying, yes, we will consider waivers, but they will be the municipal fees only.
It's the only thing that we control.
But we have discussed other fees that we could try to wade in on, and we're saying we're not going to do that now.
Well, I don't know that they've been taken off the table, but
Okay.
these are directly and specifically related
Okay.
to the fees that we have the ability to set and collect.
This was us putting our money where our mouth was.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
To
Tracy, do you have
include,
anything
the
else?
talk
Well,
was
he
using.
stole my thunder.
towards that.
I was gonna finish it, but he stole it, but that's okay. I had just started out and I was going, but you said it so
We
elegantly.
can give you something to tap with if you want.
That's okay. It's okay. You said it much better than I would. That's okay.
Okay. Rich, anything else on that?
Yeah, so I think I share Eric's unclarity of the new relationship, because I think we've lived through situations where planning commission has felt we've given them too much, we've almost painted them into a corner, to now we're not giving them enough in everything, and the sweet spot's in the middle. But the underlying thing is it appears we're moving in a collaborative method, and whatever face that takes is great. But the very thing, to answer these questions, we would have gotten in trouble if we'd have provided this information in the past. We'd have been wrong. So I think that needs to be acknowledged, that we are in some new territory and everything. I just had a couple things. Is waive the correct word, or credit towards, or something? Is there any legalities kind of thing in the verbiage there? I support the concept for sure, whatever, and it goes, I think it may go back to your procedural thing. But, you know, there's some merit in whether you're waiving something or giving a credit towards.
Well,
And
I think you may want, if I may, I think that you may want to preserve some wiggle room, because if we're right, we're talking about actual ordinance language. Perhaps the actual ordinance language should be waived or credit.
Yeah.
In terms of fees.
Sure.
Because at this point in time, until that process is determined, I'm not sure what the answer is.
Right. And I think it's fair to the developer and the staff to put some type of cap on, you know, like, this is really all we're going to consider out of the chute and everything. The only thing I would say is we should not paint it into a corner with how those credits are going to be applied, because every plan is different. And so I don't think we want to say exactly what we're going to waive. If there's a way to do waive or credit, I think we should give ourselves leeway that we can determine what's best for that plan.
So you just say general municipal fees be waived to this cap.
Yeah. May be waived or credit to up to
A certain dollar amount.
X.
Gotcha.
And we can always do more. We have to put our money where our mouth is, as Eric said, and everything. If we, 100% are behind this project and we want to put our money behind, especially if we're going into the next one where we're talking fee and lieu,
Right.
that we could use those to move forward a plan that we really believe in and everything. So I think that's critical too.
So the current ordinance, the draft ordinance says review fees developed by in-house staff reviews for subdivision and land development may be waived by College Township Council for development proposals. Do we need to change that? Isn't that what we're
Just
saying?
adding a cap, right?
Or credit, adding the credit word in there.
It's pretty
Maybe
fleshed
waived
out.
or credited, yeah, that's, conceptually, the answer is no.
Right.
Other than if council desires to actually add an upper limit. But that doesn't change the fact that ultimately that council will make that decision about a waiver or a credit.
As you're developing a plan, I think it helps to know what it looks like, what you could factor into that.
And, if we're getting plans and they're sketch plans still, that might give you an opportunity to kind of determine from there what type of fees may be waived
Yeah.
at that stage.
I kind of like your idea of leaving it general, right, which negates the whole question, right, because they're saying, what specifically do you want? It makes it easier.
Right.
And at that time, let the developer request what fee they want waived. That's the point.
And that's what it says now.
Yeah.
So we could give guidance to PC and say, what it says now is,
It's good.
But the cap isn't there.
The cap's not.
Only
Right.
we would decide
So,
on the cap.
yeah.
with a cap.
which we would need to decide.
Right.
Devil's advocate, if it's coming back to council, you're gonna make the decision what that number is going to be anyway, so why have a cap?
Is there a
Unless
method?
it's
The
to
cap serves
temper
a purpose.
expectations.
That's exactly my point of it. They come back and want $10,000 worth of whatever, and even, you know, we might have it on that plan. It's a huge plan.
But could there be, is there a ceiling to what I think we asked this before. No, there isn't.
No,
To the
because
municipal
we
fees.
ultimately have the authority.
No, but I mean, if we didn't waive anything, is it, what they would be responsible for in municipal fees, or is it scalable depending on the size of the development?
Right.
Okay, so that's why we're talking about this.
Yeah, you had
Right.
Lindsay's statistics, these are totals for 9 individual projects. So your average, okay, is basically $400 for, you know, you're talking very small dollars, but the larger the development, it's all scalable.
Right, so 100-acre, what would be the most intense use that would generate the most fees, or the biggest, or?
Subdivisions, I think, depending on how many you have, it's so many dollars per lot.
Okay.
So
here
a
we have
large
50.
subdivision would cost a lot more
We
in
have 50,
PRDs.
that's kind of typical. So ballpark that one. Can we ballpark that one?
Yeah.
Oh, he's putting you on the
so-
spot,
The
right?
plan we
So-
saw earlier tonight, is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Submission fees are kind of standard. I mean, that doesn't basically vary.
Just trying to
Right.
figure out
So-
the
But
effort.
plan review charges, I mean, and again, that's where it gets very difficult, because you can have a very clean plan that generates relatively few plan review charges because there's very little to comment on, versus, as we have experienced in the past, plans that come in that require round after round after round after round of review, whether it's for stormwater or for other elements, that can generate significant fees. So it's
So that's another
very
scalable,
difficult
another
to
variable.
quantify.
Okay.
For example,
Again, which is why you know, I'm certainly not opposed to a cap, but in some respects, unless it is intended to temper expectation, setting a cap really is an individual land development plan issue. Each one is going to be different.
right, like, for example, the application fee for a planned residential development is $1,800. And that's probably higher than it would be if you just submitted that similar plan as a land development plan.
So a lot of variable, beyond just the size of the development, number of
So-
units. Okay.
So what we would be, oh, sorry, Tracy.
No, you go ahead.
So what we would be saying is, we agree with the concept of a cap, but we're not setting the cap, that we're allowing for a cap to be used by council when we make the waiver decision, and we would be making the waiver decisions.
Yeah.
I'd take it a step further, that we suggest to planning commission that this is something we would entertain, and they could review it and tell us what they think. If they think a cap should be applied.
And if so, what it should be.
Yeah.
Can I?
Tracy?
Yeah, I wanted, along with the cap, since there's situational, like, is there, to Eric's point, like, if there's a subdivision, is there a cap that we can put on? Because it's generally, that's with subdivisions, like, can it be functional based off of the size of the development? Could we do a cap based off the size?
Right. Yeah.
So subcap.
Commiserate, yeah.
Yeah.
Commiserate with the size.
Right.
Wow.
I mean, I don't know.
That sounds like we just got a lot more complicated
I'm
than we
sorry.
were already concerned about being complicated.
Yeah, it
for.
sounds like a planning commission
Right.
work session.
That's,
Matt.
They just come up with a matrix.
There it is. There it
Yeah, if
is.
you would, please.
Well, and I-
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, do you have a
one last
comment?
thing. I mean, I think philosophically, are we trying to simplify the process or keep it open in general and put the authority back to your point, Rich, about the taxpayer dollars? It would be on council. And then in that case, we want the language more general.
Yeah, sir, please state your name.
I'm Chris
and
Stockton, I'm CFO at S&A Homes, I'm a College Township president, just if I can make a comment on
Yeah.
that. It really, there should be plenty of latitude, to your point, there's different sized plans, there's different types of fees, there should be a way of putting a hard cap on it, could change. The other thing to remember too is this, you want this ordinance to be in play for 10, 12 years, well, 5 years from now, 2,000 might not be what 2,000 is today, right? So.
Thank you.
So my question back to Lindsay through the planning commission process was, did they want guidance, and Matt, this may be the time when you want to approach the podium. Was the planning commission seeking guidance on the type of fees, or were they seeking guidance on a value?
I would say type.
I don't think we ever agreed to waive any fee in lieu.
Or,
Not fee in lieu.
fees for reviews
Yeah,
and
I would think-
submissions.
Yeah.
You don't, no, very clearly Lindsay's memo states that you're looking for some guidance
Right.
back from council about fees.
Yeah.
and
What we
should be
we're looking for is like the matrix had 5 columns, like actually on council, we had, I guess, the approving, dissenting or something like that, and we had staff, and we're just looking for, you know, all those columns to come into one. And I was just back there thinking, applying the cap to tonight's presentation, that development, I mean, they're gonna be asking for a fee in lieu of like 1.23 acres of parkland. I mean, do we ever even approve that plan? And if we don't approve it, do you folks not even see it? Is that?
Well, you're always, any action the planning commission takes.
I mean, recommend.
is that recommendation. So
Right,
ultimately, that always comes back.
Wrong
to
word,
council.
yeah.
No, understood.
But if we don't recommend it, does it go anywhere?
Well, yeah, I mean, that's taken into consideration by council as they make a final determination on whether to approve or not approve the plan.
Okay, so if we don't recommend something, the council can still act on?
Yes.
Okay.
The planning commission's feels the language should be more specific to what we will waive. Example, the whole traffic impact study fee or a portion. That was the question.
Okay, so you were looking for, the comment back, we're looking for elements, what specific fees will we waive?
Right.
Not the value thereof.
No.
What specific fees will we waive?
Exactly. Are those,
So,
application fees? Are those, our fees for review?
Right.
And traffic impact study fees, which can get a lot higher than the 2 I mentioned before.
Sure.
All of the above.
Also, didn't we look at like in-house fees versus?
Right, only in-house fees,
Yeah.
right? Municipal fees.
Municipal fees, because we thought that the discussion for tap fees, things like that, were not really there right
Right.
now.
Right, but we also we could hire an external traffic engineer, and
Well-
from our in lieu, we could contribute towards that. That's a whole other discussion and everything like that, but yeah, so to the question, I'll just throw the original, keep the flexibility. There's nothing off the table that might, because every plan is different.
As long as it's understood that what would be ultimately written into our ordinance are only fees that we control.
Yeah.
There is a distinction between what we're talking about external. External in this context does in fact mean fees that are necessary to go to PennDOT for an HOP, or fees that are necessary to be paid to UAJ, or fees that are necessary to be paid to either the State College Borough Water Authority or the College Township Water Authority. Those are completely external. They are completely outside of the control of College Township. The township hiring a transportation engineer to do a review is a internal cost, which would be subject to potential inclusion in a waiver.
Or
Right.
credit.
Or,
Our credit. Okay, so we have consensus on leaving it general for municipal internal fees, something of that sort in that language, without a cap.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, so we're moving on to number 2.
Great, thanks. So this is about the formula, and when the Housing and Land Trust representative was at council, or at the Planning Commission meeting, she went over the formula a little, so it would, and it's what they use. So it takes into consideration the, I have my notes here, land value, minimum square footage, and square footage of dwelling type. So the actual formula, and we use the we use data from the Center County Association of Realtors, and we use data from the Center Region Code Agency. So vacant land value from previous years, that's the information you get from the Realtor Association. Multiply that by the minimum lot size, and that gives you the value of the land. Then you would take the minimum square footage for a dwelling type, whatever you're proposing, if it's single family, multifamily, and you multiply that by the cost, the ICC cost of construction, and then that gives you your cost of construction. And you add those two together, and that becomes your fee in lieu. And that's been successful in other local municipalities. So that's the recommendation, and just wanted to make sure that council was okay with using this.
yeah, real quick, a number of years ago, there was an ad hoc group that was put together. I was involved in that, where we were trying to identify what an appropriate value for an in lieu affordable housing unit would be, okay? And after any number of sessions involving the county, involving the Center Region Code Director, and other folks, people who are involved in real estate, et cetera, we were able to come up with this particular formula. So please do not be confused when we're saying fee in lieu here. We're not in any way talking about parkland. This is a fee in lieu. Somebody wants to pay to not develop an attainable housing unit. What is the value? How is that cost going to be determined? That's what this formula is designed to do. And it's rather, in some ways, it's elegant in its simplicity, it's straightforward, it's easily understood. And that basically has been the process that has been utilized with varying has been utilized as a base. How ultimately either Ferguson or Patton or another entity has utilized that has been their own individual decision. But as the starting point to what is or would be deemed to be an acceptable fee in lieu number, this is the formula that generates that data.
Okay. Council, comments or questions? I'll go first. I support the use of that hard data.
Same here.
Same.
Rich?
Same, and another point that we may have talked about, but it comes up in discussions of these type ordinances and stuff, is the term of the commitment. Example, the borough has a very long commitment on that, and so a lot of people, because their crystal balls aren't that good, that long, they do the in lieu, whereas our goal is to have the units more than the money. We'd rather have the units than just the money. So I think that's a critical piece of any in lieu discussion, is that the term of the commitment to it be reasonable enough such that they won't just write the check.
Right.
And everything.
But we don't need to decide that as part of this.
No,
That
I
would
just
be a case by-
offer it. Yeah, I just offer it. But I absolutely You know, I agree. It should be based on real stuff that people can put their hands on and that protects staff and council.
In some ways, no different than the rationale we're trying to establish for parkland fee in lieu. We want the ability we want the discretionary ability on a case-by-case basis based on timing, proximity. That's what you're saying, right?
Yeah. Yeah, but also not do the business decision for the developer out of the gates.
Yeah.
You know, kind of things is kind of what I'm saying, but
Okay.
having been in to make those kind of decisions, I chose the in lieu, whereas I would have preferred to put the units in.
Right.
Susan?
I 100% agree with Rich that by making fee in lieu optional, which is what we did, we've opened up the possibility that we won't get those units. And so I really appreciate what you said. I think the other piece that's important is to define, it says previous year's number. Are we talking about the previous measurement year, the previous calendar year, however? So we're not doing a look back and incorporating value of land 10 years ago when it might have been purchased. We're looking at just the last year's value. So we're looking at current value.
Yeah,
That's important to
essentially,
me.
the formula is a little more complicated than what is written here, but
Right.
basically you're looking at taking the average value of all R1 land that was sold within a defined area, whether that's the center region
Right.
or center county, et cetera.
But also,
Yeah, and basically figuring out what that per parcel,
and that
or
would be,
per acre
that would be
cost.
defined by time to a current value, not a value 10 years ago. or-
Oh, absolutely.
Right.
That's like a rolling 12 months?
No, it would, I'm not sure. I'm not positive how we're doing that. That's a bit in the weeds. I think Missy probably has some information related to
Well, and I
that.
think that came up as a point for PC, so I wanted to clarify that it would reflect the more current value.
Okay. All right.
Thank
Got
you.
what you need in that? We're at number 3, I think.
Yeah, thank you. So land donations, the question, I guess, is how does council anticipate seeing land donations both within and outside College Township? Currently, there are, one municipality within the region has a workforce housing ordinance. I know another municipality is working to update theirs. So there may be an opportunity for reciprocity if we do allow for land donations to other municipalities. But something that we wanted to bring up too is those land donations should probably be within this regional growth boundary.
Well, let me jump in.
But you're first, so go for it.
Okay. If it's another municipality, then it's going to be, oh, I see what you mean. It's going to be it's going to be in their growth boundary in their municipality.
Right.
Okay, well, that's just common sense, so I think that's a good point. I wouldn't even think we'd have to think about that, but you're suggesting that be written in.
I mean, just thinking like, I have a bunch of land in Western Ferguson, I can donate to you. Meanwhile, you
But
can't
there's no
build anything
sewer
on
or
that
water
land.
or,
Exactly,
you know,
because it's not there.
infrastructure to support any kind of housing, let alone affordable. Gotcha.
And how exactly does that benefit College Township?
Right.
Well, I wasn't addressing that. I was thinking if we could agree on that, obviously it needs to be within the growth boundary. But does it have to benefit College Township? If the goal is affordable housing.
Regionally, yeah.
Regionally, then I'm going to go out on an island here and be one of those guys who thinks regionally.
Out there.
And I think as long as the other townships have the ordinances
Yes.
to support that. And right now,
Yes.
in this moment, we don't have that.
We have one, right?
Right.
Yeah, one.
So if we open this up, we potentially open this up to a land donation in a municipality that doesn't have an attainable or affordable
No,
house.
what I think I heard staff say, though, one of the conditions is they'd have to have one, right?
They'd have to
So
have.
that limits us to one municipality.
Reciprocity and.
But to Adam's point earlier, things that College Township can
Yes.
control. And we forfeit that.
This is a building for the future. Okay, this is an anticipatory clause in a proposed ordinance. Because at the moment, any of the other existing or contemplated ordinances speak in no way to reciprocity. Ours would be the first. And it's entirely anticipatory that at some point in time that, let's just say because Patton's in the process of developing a workforce housing or an attainable housing ordinance, that they actually build in reciprocity. If our ordinance is in place, this particular clause would be anticipatory that it could only be utilized if someone else had wrote in reciprocity in their own ordinance.
And the fundamental thing that council has to accept that, correct? That's not a given. That's
Right.
Oh, yeah, right. I mean,
Right,
it would
so
have to-
council's got the
it would be a
final
whole
say.
process.
If
And
we don't like
if
the
it
way it's
doesn't-
worded or the way they,
we don't think it's gonna work the way we want it to work, we retain the authority of that. I mean, I understand the regional thing, but
we're not giving anything away at this point. If we,
exactly, because we retain the final
Yeah.
say on that. But I would just offer that we have acted regionally before,
I know where
and we
you're going.
were alone.
And so far, we're ahead of things.
But hey, if nobody takes us up on it, bad for them.
Yeah.
If they don't even
If it's a
try.
regional goal,
Yes.
we're doing we're walking the walk.
The only other question I would have is there the potential for segregating attainable or affordable housing in a particular area of the region? Because we are looking, to your point about the township, we're looking to create socioeconomic diversity in this township. So moving those donations out of our municipality
The
flies in the face.
potential, the
It's
potential.
Potential, you're right.
Yeah.
But
So,
if
yeah,
we
the
have a
question-
case-by-case veto,
Yeah,
then
As long as we
that
retain the ultimate
yeah.
decision.
The only
we're good.
challenge there is depending on the composition of the council. We could run into a different type of council that might have a different take on that. Just food for
Right.
thought.
Right,
Since it's
well,
potential.
they could just, rewrite the entire ordinance again.
They could.
So,
It's
I mean,
I get that. It's a
Yeah.
living document, but I also think it's important to anticipate. That's what we've been talking about.
And when Matt
We're
gets off
anticipating the
DC,
anticipation.
anticipatory.
We're good.
Anticipatory is the word
We
of the
just keep
night.
getting better.
All right, did anything specific, Tracy? Rich, anything else?
No, I think that's.
Susan?
Thanks.
Not me, so I think there's some good feedback there.
Yeah,
right?
definitely, thank you. So number 4 talks about credits for existing housing. The Planning Commission would want some further input here from council. Currently, in order to get credits for existing housing, you can't use any other regulatory relief, such as, no regulatory relief can be applied to a development, and then that development can go ahead and use those credits too. So so once an incentive is applied, such as open space relief or height, then the opportunity to use those units as existing credits go away. So that's something that, the Planning Commission's wondering if that's still the way. I mean, it's written in the ordinance this way currently, and if that's the way council sees us moving forward.
Tracy?
I'd say yes.
Yes, that we said? Rich?
I'm not sure what I'm saying yes to.
Lindsay's question, I believe, right?
Yes,
Like I said,
The
way it's
I'm
written.
saying what I'm
That's the
saying yes
question.
to.
the way it's written.
Currently,
Yeah.
keeping it current, is that what we're saying yes to?
In the draft ordinance, keeping it?
Keeping it the way that it is currently written in the
Existing.
existing ordinance.
Existing or the draft?
Existing.
Which,
Existing.
okay.
Yeah.
So, okay, the existing ordinance, the one that is in play right now, okay, there is a section, a clause that states specifically, you want to read that again? Or do you not?
Yeah. In order to get credit for existing housing, no other regulatory relief can be applied to a development. Once an incentive is applied, such as open space, relief, or height, the ability to use credits for existing housing goes away.
Should that beginning say, should, have already been used for regulatory relief?
Yeah, I don't have.
Because that would have happened in the past, right?
Right, yes.
Yeah.
You're not wrong, Eric. I think that we could clarify that.
Yeah.
If they've already used it, right?
Right, that they've already used the additional stories or reduction in stormwater.
Let's also clarify what we mean by credit.
Yeah.
Because I
Right.
think that's important too.
Right.
In this particular case, the credit that is at issue is whether or not the township is granted regulatory relief under what is now our existing workforce housing ordinance. That relief is in the context of height, additional height increases, potential reduction in sidewalk builds, potential reduction on parkland requirements, those kinds of things. That is the relief, that is what is being referred to in this conversation as the credit. Because there isn't any credit in any other capacity that is written into our existing ordinance. It is only the relief. So once relief has been granted on a project, you can only use it on that.
It's a land development plan.
It's a land development. Okay, but I think it's important because credits connote different ideas.
Right.
But what we're really talking about here is we're talking about regulatory relief.
Yeah,
Okay.
that makes better sense.
Right, so can we put numbers to it? Like number of units and X number of units were attainable on a previous, or workforce on a previous, or whatever.
Sure.
So by receiving the benefits of having done that, which would be the height, this or that or the other thing, I agree, you can't double dip. But does that shelve the remaining units that aren't currently attainable? Could those units at that existing development be used, potentially be used towards a future development, or an adjoining a future, or whatever like that? Is that a possibility?
Not under the existing ordinance.
Okay.
That is not contemplated in the existing ordinance.
Okay.
Okay. So in that respect, there would have to be new and different language in the proposed ordinance to try in some way to
Right.
accommodate that.
Yeah, and I guess, again, I'm looking at it, we want the units.
Right.
Whether it's at the new development or in the old development, I personally don't care, I want the units. And so if we can accommodate that, because the way it's written right now, that entire everything on that other development, you can't get any credit for towards the new development. And I think that we lose some flexibility in doing that.
True, but do understand that in order for the theoretical credit to be given or to transfer units that are not declared as workforce housing units, that those units would have to be declared as workforce housing units and operate as such.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, so they would be subject to our income limitations, meet those criteria, and ultimately be able to be placed into the College Township program / inventory.
And a time clock would start of 25 or 30 years on it.
Right, and our program is a 30-year affordability.
Yep.
So Yeah, I see where, you know.
Right, no, I know exactly what you're saying, and again, we want the units.
Yeah.
And so if we can accommodate that in, important for me, in College Township, an existing College Township development, we convert some market rate to attainable as part of some concession over on this development, you know, again, we just want the units.
I guess I'm confused as to whether you do it to the old or the new, you're still getting the same amount of units.
That's kind of where I'm.
Right.
But the way it's written now, that previous development, if it received any kind of relief under the it was then workforce housing ordinance, all the units in there can't even be considered. Yet you've already got existing units in there. Why would it be a bad thing to have 4 more units, just easy numbers, 4 more units in that development?
Converted.
Yeah. Conversion, I guess, is a potential
Conversion's
concept.
probably a better.
Yeah, conversion's
concept
probably,
than
yeah,
convert.
right. That's
So-
my
so
only,
you're
that's
saying-
my only point.
So you're saying like if you rewrite the ordinance and you allow for the conversion, you can get more units than moving forward, like where it's written now? Is that what you're saying? Like potentially? Potentially.
Yes.
Okay.
I think I'm looking at giving the flexibility to the developer that maybe this new development isn't the place to have this. Maybe it's not, and I know that there's concern, we want diversification, this, that, you know, all that kind of stuff. But let's be real, there are certain places that it doesn't work. We want the units. And so if we get the units, in particular, what really I think of is if I get a development here and a development here, what do I care if I get 4 here or 4 here if they're right next door to each other and everything? But there might be economic reason that incents the developer to do that, to do, and maybe it's at a premium. Maybe conversion comes at a premium versus if you put them in the new development, just as a concept to float. But that's again, bottom line, we want to get units. And however we can best get them.
And I think that there was a good example. If you're putting in a new development with $500,000 townhomes, that might create a challenge in terms of putting these units in there.
Yeah,
That was an example that was brought up at PC directly. So
That's a good
to
point.
your point, if we don't do this, we could potentially lose units because developments could be reconfigured to change the density trigger.
Or they're gonna make the
So-
business decision.
Exactly.
And write the check.
So, you know, I see what you're saying, and yes, you're right, you know, I do bring up the diversity piece.
Yep.
And that's important, but the business piece is important too, and the number of units we can get into the township to get more people in the workforce into housing here, I agree with that.
I disagree. I think that we're choosing one over the other, and we're saying more housing is better than having diversity. And I just disagree. I can't, I think that it should be the responsibility on, and maybe we can readjust some things to make it more appealing, but I think it should be on the responsibility of the developer. That if we're setting a trend and we're saying that diversity and social diversity should be a thing, then we shouldn't say that it's unattainable in any space that they're going to develop it. That's just how I feel. It set the priority, set the precedent. If we're going to be putting our money where our mouth is, then let's do it. Let's do it all the way. Let's not give them an out.
But right there's the point. We're not putting our money where our mouth is. We're putting their money where our mouth is. And that's where I have an issue with it, because I've been through this, is that you penalize the last guys. The current attainable housing thing generally isn't the fault of the developer standing before us today. It's the one that was 20, 30 years ago. Unfortunately, this whole trend is late and everything. So we have to balance, I feel we have to balance this in getting units in general, as well as working wherever possible to get diversity in each one and everything, but unless we're willing to write the check to make this last person to the game whole, it's tough. We've been very, very fortunate in the Center Region, I feel, with Eric Kervangian and Heidi Nicholas's firm going out and getting state money to make these things, the economics of these things work. And I mean, I sure hope they keep doing it. And I think they have a couple opportunities to keep doing that. And I hope they do that and everything. So conceptually, I absolutely support and understand what you're saying. And maybe it's because I have some developer in my blood that I've experienced this, is because I'm standing in front of you today versus 20 years ago, I have to pay the consequence of bad public policy.
Just to insert a dose of what I consider to be reality, I think I think having the ability to convert market units into affordable or attainable units is something that is another tool in the toolbox. The reality of that at this particular point in time within the Center Region, within College Township, in my opinion, is somewhat remote. I don't believe you're going to see that. Developer A has a market rate development of 25 units and wants now to develop a new 25 or 35 unit development. And they're required to provide, in that case, in 35 units, they'd be required to provide 4 affordable housing units. They would have to literally convert at least that many units in the market rate complex to avoid building them new in the new proposed development. While I think those opportunities and those situations likely exist in larger urban areas, I don't know that those exist here. Now, that's just a personal opinion. So, and that's why I say the reality, in my opinion, of that is I think that those are, it's a tool, it could be used to accomplish the same goal. The reality is that I think we're really looking not so much at the conversion issue as we are at getting new units built with new development.
Okay, Eric, thoughts?
We have we're posed with 2 questions, and we've kind of crossed streams with the answers. One is the first thing we started talking about, which was the existing workforce housing units, right? The ones that exist right now. Can they be, what was the term we were using? You're asking for input on those. Well, I'll go back to that. Okay. The second question then was the remaining units, and can they be, should they be allowed to be converted? So I've been listening to what everybody says, and if we want units, that should be the goal, I agree. So it really comes down to what we think would happen, and we'll use an example. A new development comes online, and the developer has a choice. They can provide the 4 required units, because that's not optional, or they could offer fee in lieu, or they could convert. So using your example and Rich's example, if we really want units, and this is a place that is not conducive or economically feasible to provide them on site, now they're down to fee in lieu or conversion. Are we more likely to see them offer fee in lieu then instead of conversion, or is it the other way around? If we don't offer conversion, then we're most likely going to see fee in lieu, which to me is at the bottom, personally, of the 3 choices. You know, my hierarchy is on-site, conversion off-site, fee and lieu, because the fee and lieu goes to us, and then it's up to us to figure out where to build them and buy them, right? And
At
that gets
prevailing
them.
wage.
Yeah, so that's why that's at the bottom. So I'm liking the conversion option only because it may make fee and lieu less attractive from an affordability standpoint. Am I seeing this, am I missing something here?
I just have a different wrinkle to it, so I don't want to.
Okay, no, but go ahead, well, because I'm not convinced. I'm
Add
just
another wrinkle.
I'll add another wrinkle to it, so.
thinking out loud as
You know,
well.
and I guess this is one of those unintended consequences pieces of conversion. While I fundamentally agree with that, I think there's an opportunity, you know, to grab units in facilities that allow them the business case in other developments. My one concern is, and maybe a guide rail that needs to be considered, is you may have a developer at some point that recognizes the value of that conversion and it only is converting units in older stock facilities.
Right.
And that gets to your equity point.
There has to be a comparable.
Right, so
standard.
that's the guide rail piece that, it, you know, probably needs to be applied to conversions.
Gotcha.
While, again, I fundamentally agree with conversions, I think that's a good opportunity to claw back units and provide some flexibility.
But-
the unintended consequence is you get an older building that's outdated.
I understand that.
It's not an equal trade-off.
But if they still have the option for fee and lieu, isn't the conversion of the older units better for us than fee and lieu?
It depends.
It gets more, potentially gets more units into the pipeline sooner.
Yeah.
Right, but I think Mike's absolutely
You know,
correct,
and
because that's the concern, the methodology that's kind of being used in the region is all this new student housing is being developed and people are moving to that, and then that opens up the old stuff, because mom and dad will pay for them to be in the new stuff and everything, why be in the old stuff, and then will that move to a more attainable pricing location and everything, and where is that? Mostly on the fringes of the center region and everything. So
Yes and no.
it's better to have attainable units than not have attainable units, but ideally, as Tracy indicated, that, you know, they're ingrained into the fabric of our community, you know, throughout and everything.
But they won't necessarily be that way if we get stuck with fee and lieu.
Correct.
And that's the only point that I'm making, is I
Yes.
agree with everybody, but then I keep thinking fee and lieu, fee and lieu. If we make this too difficult,
And again, I see the borough's got a huge nest egg of fee and lieu.
and that's
I'd rather
nice.
see it in play.
Right, exactly. Whereas a conversion could be made quickly. And again, I'm not sold on this, I'm just talking out loud. But just circling back to the first part, since it came back to me, it was the double dipping that Rich talked about. It's almost a separate issue. Well, it is a separate issue. And we should be able to decide on that. What Adam is saying is you build 40 units, 4 of them are affordable housing, 36 are market, okay? But you've got, what was the term you used, not credit, relief.
Regulatory relief, yeah.
We got regulatory relief for those 4. In other words, you got to go higher, or less stormwater, less sidewalks, or whatever. So the question to us is, can those 4 then be reused as credit after they've already gotten credit? Isn't that what we're asking?
Yes,
Yeah, actually,
that's it.
yes. I mean, I think you're talking about the other 36, not the 4.
Well,
I am,
yes and no, but under the current ordinance, those 4 can't be reused. They cannot be used.
Those
Nor
4
can
are
the
already-
36.
Nor
Those
can the-
under
right.
the current, under the court.
Neither can be used.
So,
Correct.
so the only reason I bring that up is it possible that those 4 being used, reused for credit, is that better than a conversion? Probably not, huh? I mean, if we made those available, is that better than offering the conversion, or is that worse?
So are you saying the additional 4 units that they would have gotten at market rate because we gave them the regulatory relief with height?
Yeah. Right now, they're locked out from being used as credit, because they already got credit in the sense
Right.
that they got
So they got
regulatory
the 4,
relief.
they got the 4 attainable or affordable units, and we gave them regulatory relief and let them build another story, so they got 4 more market rate. And what we're talking about is converting those market rate, those 4 that they got as part of the
Well, we're
relief we
debating
gave
it
them.
because we're not sure
Right.
that everybody
So
wants
the only
it.
thing I would offer is the way, in my reading of the current draft, it says, it doesn't talk about the 4 units that have been, it talks about the property that the 4 units are in. So you've benched the other 36, again, keep these easy numbers. You did 40, it was 40 units, you did 4 affordable, attainable workforce, whichever version of the article you were in. Those 4 you shouldn't be able to, and I'm gonna caveat that in a second, but the way it's currently written, the other 36 can't even be considered. And that's what I have a concern with, going back to the conversion discussion and everything. And I do believe that there should be, if it is in an older one, there should be a requirement to remodel, upgrade, update, or whatever like
So
those, for
conversion with
those to count.
guardrails. I think
Yeah, exactly, that's it. So the other point that I would go to, so the 4 units, ours has a 30-year life. Let's say if this was in the 29th year or 25th year or whatever like that. So they're coming out, they could come out of the affordable, they could not be counted again. So is there a point in which that you can get credit for those 4 by maybe re-extending the 30 years or something like
Before
that?
that, without considering it a double dip, because you already got your 30 years worth out of
Exactly.
the regulatory relief, can you then use them for 30 more?
Dynamic.
Yeah.
I mean, I think, I think that you could have a reapplication process that simply would, that begins in year 28 or 29, that would allow, get over the 30-year life, that would allow for an additional 30-year life of the attainable unit.
Because that would not be a double dip, because
Yes.
you got your regulatory relief, you gave 30 years for that.
Yeah,
Now you're going to give another 30 years for credit.
yes.
I mean,
That was kind of-
they've essentially become market rate units at that point, so you're giving back market rate units.
They would
It
become.
would be
Right, that's
choice.
what I'm saying.
And we're
That's
keeping them
right.
in the
So we're-
inventory by
right.
simply giving them as
Right.
credit.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah,
And that's
when
consistent.
you've reached the end of your affordability period, so that 30-year affordability period, you're essentially saying apply some credit for retention.
Right.
Yes.
Of
Yeah,
those-
staying
Yeah,
in the-
So-
retention credit.
But somewhere, maybe after 25 years is when it could start.
Yeah.
You know, you could apply for it
Yeah,
at
what,
20 or
where
25.
on the timeline, you know, I'm not
Okay.
writing to that.
Not year 5.
The credit may not be 100% at year 25. Maybe you're only saying, well, we're gonna give you.
Yeah, it could be a
80,
sliding
70,
scale.
Sliding scale.
So that answers my question about the 4. Can we somehow get some more value out of them? And I like that.
It's a retention bonus,
And so
essentially.
we're back to the other 36 and whether or not we want to include conversion as an option versus requiring on-site and possibly forcing them into fee and lieu.
Now, my guide rail comment would still apply in that
Right.
instance. So a 30-year unit, if you're retaining that, there's probably got to be some level of expectation or requirement associated with the value of that unit. So I don't know what that even looks like. I'm just throwing that out.
Well, we just came up with all that tonight, so what do you mean you don't have it?
I'm sure this will not come back from planning.
I know.
Ever.
So, on
Nothing
this
will ever
one,
come back.
on this one, have we given them enough to chew on? Do you wanna make one more?
One more.
Yeah.
Isn't there types of units that we are currently benefiting from affordable, attainable, whatever, that aren't in our
Yeah.
program?
Well, yes, we have had units that have been developed using outside program funds that are they're affordable funds that require that the units that are developed by the use of those outside funds stay within the context of that particular program. What we have allowed in the recent past is we have allowed for those affordable units with a lifespan of a minimum of 30 years to utilize the provisions, the incentives of our existing workforce housing ordinance. So we have allowed developments to utilize additional bonus, height bonus, unit bonuses. We've allowed them to utilize the parkland relief, some, sidewalk relief, all those different type of incentives that we presently have embedded in our existing ordinance. We have allowed developers to utilize those incentives, even though the units are not within the College Township program. They're still affordable units, but they're affordable because of the funding sources that were utilized to create them.
And those are different programs.
They're
So
different
those would be,
programs.
for example, tax credits. So there's a tax credit, and this is development that's going to not the attainable housing workforce, the group we're talking about, for example, Aspirin. This would be something different, and this would be a lower income population of people, and we would apply, they would get the credits for doing that through the outside program, but then also get the additional, and so sort of, in that case, that does sound a bit like double dipping.
Yeah, it does.
But in that case, I'm sorry,
But you were talking about realistically, that's just as viable a source or a way to get affordable housing
Right.
in the inventory. So the question to us is, do we want to offer that same relief if somebody meets the same criteria but through a funding source that's not ours, in order to further encourage the development of it?
right, this boils down to philosophical intent, why we have it in the first place.
In a sense, it may be considered double dipping, but it's also a way to get more stock in.
Sure.
So if somebody prefers the state credit option, but all of those rules are the same as ours, 30 years, that kind of stuff, and that's a better road for them than the traditional developing under ours, isn't that our goal?
And I think, you could say it double dipping, or you could say we really want to incentivize that development in our township, which makes sense.
Yeah. Unless I'm missing something, that could be an option, because it sounds like we already gave them that treatment anyways.
Right,
So we
so
just
we
be-
we have done that
right.
on at least one occasion.
We would just have to memorialize that in the, or we would have to legitimize it, or, so I kind of think on the surface that would be a good thing, but haven't really thought it seems like it would be a good thing.
And regardless, it's a potential candidate for conversion or retention
Yeah.
later, depending on where it is in the life cycle and
Several,
everything.
there's several existing properties like that already in the township.
Yes, that's kind of
Okay.
where I was.
So I think Lindsay's gonna be watching the CNET video on this quite a bit.
Probably a few times,
This
yeah.
conversation, excellent conversation.
So that's actually
Are we
a
good to
third
move on to the
point.
next one?
That's actually a third,
Yeah.
I have one last question. The only units that we have in the township now that are attainable, that are at that 65% of the AMI or lower, are the 28 in Aspen. We have several other units that are affordable. So we are creating opportunities for people from different income levels to move in and, for example, if it's workforce housing, work in the area and afford to be able to take jobs that they couldn't otherwise take and work in the township. So that's what we're saying.
That is correct. Yes. We have a grand total of 28 of
Right.
workforce units in
Right.
the College Township inventory. But there are many more affordable units that have been developed with outside money
Right.
and other rules that have been developed that are also affordable.
And so without negating the value of those units and having them in our stock, which I think is very important, is there the potential, if we keep this way, to de-incentivize the development of those units that would appeal to somebody, say, at 40%, or would be available to somebody from 40% to 65% of the AMI? If we were doing it the same way, we would have had more Aspen stock. Am I not understanding?
I'm
that
not
correctly?
sure I understand when you say de-incentivize. We're trying
Well,
to disincentive,
Well,
disincentives.
I think your income has to be at a certain threshold to live in those other units.
That's true.
So if that development continues, there will be this missing middle that isn't included because we didn't point the ordinance in more clear support of that. That's what I'm saying. So, I mean, I don't want to say I don't think those units are important and the development of them isn't, but I think if that is the way it was, we would have had more attainable units by now.
I think a couple of things. I think the development of those type of, let's just use the program, the tax credit program. I think the development of tax credit program units will continue, whether it's here in College Township or
Right.
elsewhere. So those will continually be developed over time. So I think that particular issue is addressed. I do believe that our ordinances are kind of, from this point looking forward, and we're really addressing new construction, new inventory. And with the rules that we have for new construction, new inventory, I believe we'll achieve addressing over time that more of the missing middle. So I think both of those issues will be served.
Because right now, somebody making $52,000 a year can't live in those affordable units, and they can't get into units in the township anywhere else except the 28 we have. So
Right.
that's the only, that's.
Right.
Yep. Okay.
Could I share an interesting item on some of our tax credit developments? They just recently opened Evergreen Heights, which is a senior affordable and everything. Interestingly, they expressed a challenge getting people qualified to go into those because it takes your Medicare look back at your retirement plans and everything. You're within the window to start collecting your retirement plans and everything. And that factors into the analysis of your ability to afford to live there and everything. So what the developer was able to do was take some of their folks at the non-age restricted development and move them into the senior one, which opened up availability in the other developments for which they had long waiting lists for and everything. So, I mean, I just thought that was a great win for College Township, how that all played out. But I just share that because I certainly I wouldn't have thought about it, from an affordability standpoint for a senior that, that would have come into play as much and everything. But it's great that it ended up being it was able to create a win-win.
All right. We good? Number 5?
Yeah, I'm gonna put 5 and 6 together, they're related. Calculation of rental prices. This traditionally and how it exists now for rentals is up to 65% of AMI. We discussed briefly about increasing that for rentals to maybe up to 70, 75, 80. But the higher you go, the less discount you receive. So the Planning Commission's input was, when we talked about increasing it, they said, let's leave it at 65% because that is a more meaningful discount. That's like $250 versus maybe $50. So that was their input, is that 65% is more meaningful. But if council's not comfortable with that and wants to see, then as we move to the second one, that gap closed, because currently, if you have a rental, if you're renting units, you can make up to 65% of AMI. If you're home buying an owner-occupied unit, it's anywhere between 80 and 120%. So between 65% and 80%, that little gap is missing. So that's something that the council didn't have the opportunity to weigh in. So we're looking for we did have some recommendations, maybe a first-time homebuyer credit for the people who are in that gap. I know the development community reached out and suggested to offer maybe 20% of their units are targeted towards the 65% to 80%. And then after so long, if they're not being taken up, then they can move to that other targeted range.
Yeah, the biggest issue here is that our current program is 65% of AMI or less. And if you remember the continuum of housing diagram that we talked about before, okay. In the affordable housing world.
Recording stopped.
Whatever that is. Once a AMI between 80 and 100% is reached, that is the point at which people have a better, not an exclusive or guaranteed, but a better opportunity to actually become a home owner, okay, starting at about 80%. Currently, our rentals, if we have affordable rentals, we use the 65% below. That meets a need that's clearly there. This 15% gap between 65 and 80 is a problematic area. If you increase the rental level to be 70, 75, up to 80%, you're nearly at market rate rents in terms of the way that the flow-through calculations work. You're offering relatively no true tangible benefit to a person that's at 75% AMI from paying a market rent on their own. So there's really no true relief that's being granted there. So we could easily close that 15% gap simply by allowing people that make up to 79% of AMI the ability to rent places here, but you're not going to serve that 15% of the population. In reality, you're not making it, you're not achieving the goal of what affordable housing hopes to do, which is to provide people an opportunity to get into a rental unit at something less than market rate. So just think about the example that we have at Aspen. Right now you have roughly market rate rents on those units, on one-bedroom units, about $1,400 a month, okay? At 65% AMI, individuals are receiving roughly a $300 to maybe $400 discount in terms of what they're paying in rent versus market. So they're paying about $1,100 approximately, and I'm using very round numbers here just to make it easy. They're paying about $1,100 and what otherwise would have been a $1,400 monthly cost. So that is pretty significant, that $300 a month. You know, you're talking several $1,000s a year savings in terms of housing costs for that particular individual. The closer, the higher you make that number, above 65, that savings to the renter shrinks until you get to a point where it's not particularly meaningful. And yet, those individuals in that 15% band are likely not going to be in any way eligible to be a homeowner. If they're going to struggle to make market rent, they're likely not going to be able to handle a homeowner kind of a situation. So that's the gap we're really trying to deal with here. So while I think there might be some flexibility to move the 65 up some, you're still going to be left with, I think you can likely move it from the 65 that we're at now to 70, but you're still going to be left with a 10% gap. And what do we do to offer folks relief through our attainable housing ordinance within that 10% gap? So there were two recommendations or two suggestions that have been made. One was for those people in that 15%, 10% band where there isn't really any benefit right now, we could offer some type of first-time home buyer assistance. That's one option on the table. The other that was suggested, and I think this came from one of the developer comments.
Correct.
Was that a certain portion of the otherwise affordable units, a percentage of those affordable units, would be specifically carved out and dedicated over a period of time, whether that's 1 year, 2 years, or 3 years, and to be marketed to those individuals in that 15% band, at which time then they could be utilized for anybody that was otherwise income eligible. So, difficult concepts. This is really difficult to explain verbally. I apologize for that, but that's really, we're dealing with a gap that we have. We have good intentions in having our attainable housing ordinance. We can address for sure people that are at 65% and below AMI. We've proven that's worked, and Aspen is the case in point. We know that at 80 to 100%, people are more likely to be able to become a homeowner. What do we do with people that are at 66% to 79% of AMI? That's the crux of the issue.
Okay. Thoughts, Susan?
I'm trying to put it into the context of people I work with. So nurses that I work with who are in that gap, they probably wouldn't qualify to come in at 65% of the AMI, but they wouldn't make the 80% for home ownership. And even if we gave them some sort of credit, and I'm not sure, I need to understand what that first-time homebuyer credit would be, the long-term cost of home ownership might be overwhelming. Could be, maybe not. So I need to understand that part better, how that would provide some relief or support for them. I think, just thinking it through, what is a meaningful discount? What is a meaningful amount of money that makes it meaningful? Who defines meaningful? For some people I know, they would push themselves with a $50 a month reduction in rent to get their kids into the state college school district. They would do that. And they would find a way, and they would look at the cost of gas driving in from Blair County, and they would offset the cost of gas that they're paying. So I think there's some potential. I favor going closer to the 80% to open that up. And I think what I heard you say was that this would be something that would be available for a limited time. And if that doesn't work, it would revert back to the 65% AMI and then become available there. So I think we don't know. I think there's still too many unknowns about that group of people. But they're otherwise shut out.
So I would just say that I like both. I don't think it's a one or the other. I think we have to, force towards that carving out. And I kind of like that point in time where you say, well, you can rent for a couple of years, because then they're like, well, maybe they only need a couple of years. Maybe they are progressing, and then they are up above that 80%. They might not need a long-term situation, right? So it gives that. So I know the first-time home buyer credit is something that we'd have to manage, that we would have to look at, right? Obviously fee and lieu would probably fund that, right? I don't think it's a one or the other. I like them both. Yeah. Eric?
Same thing, two questions. The first time home buyer credit, a lot of the folks who are in that 80 or 85 who can't make the jump, it's not so much the mortgage payment as it's the down payment. That's usually the barrier, because you can stretch a mortgage out for 30 years and get it manageable. The thought is the home buyer credit would be at the buyer's discretion to use, theoretically, for a down payment, right? It's a lump sum thing? Okay. Then going back to the developer's suggestion, where we could go to 80 or 85 for a period of time, I think is what I heard you say, for a select sub number of units. But would that sliding scale still apply? So even if we opened it up to 85, would they still be getting such, or 80, that the discount is so small? Or would those subset of units be set out for people up to 85, but they'd be paying the rate as if they were at 65?
I don't think that was what was contemplated, the payment at 65%.
No.
I think it was just the making it available.
Okay,
So-
but what you're saying is it'll have minimal impact.
Well, I mean, in terms of what we're looking at in our experience right now, I mean, we know right now that someone at the top of our 65% range is getting about approximately a $300 a month discount.
By the time you get to 80 or 85, most of that disappears.
Right.
Okay. So still, I support having them both as options, because even though that one sounds less valuable, unless they're going to give it to them at 65.
Right, and I don't think that was, I don't believe that was really the notion.
Yeah, I mean, would you either, if you applied it to the gap and then after that period of time is up, then do you go to up to 65% and give it to them?
Okay. Those were my thoughts.
Tracy?
I agree with both. I don't think it's either or. And maybe if it's not 65, maybe it's 70. Pay a little bit more then, but I think that's something to examine, like to have those specific units and then maybe increase their benefit, decrease, you understand what I'm saying? Like,
I think I
if
do.
it's not 300, it's 250 or 150.
Yeah.
Right.
Do you understand what I'm saying? And that'll help push them, like Dustin said, maybe they only need 2-3 years.
Right.
Into the home ownership, so that's the ultimate goal, so.
Okay, so then prepare two options?
Rich, do you have any comments?
No, I agree with both. More tools are better.
Right, both.
Got it.
Yeah, more tools
Okay.
are better.
Well, thank you for that entire discussion. I appreciate it, and I'm sure the planning commission will too.
Okay, new business one, interim finance director.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. As you know, April 30th, Mr. Bob Long retired from service as the College Township Treasurer and Finance Director. And we have gone through a recruitment and interview process, and we had extended an offer to an initial candidate, and ultimately that offer was rejected. And given, I'm sorry, not rejected, was not accepted ultimately. Or actually, what's the
Rescinded.
right word?
Rescinded.
Accepted and
On
rescinded.
his part.
Yes.
Okay.
He rescinded
He
his
declined.
acceptance. He rescinded his acceptance.
Right. So with that, and given the fact that we have a number of things coming to a head, and the need for us to have both a finance director and as well as a bonded township treasurer, I wish to place into consideration this evening the recommendation that Kim Petitschnock, currently the College Township Accounting Assistant, be appointed as both the interim treasurer and finance director for a period of 120 days effective June 24 of 2024.
Okay. Anybody have any questions for the manager? Anybody wish to make a motion
So
on that?
moved.
So seconded.
Do we have any further discussion? Call the question. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. And that's unanimous. Okay.
Thank you.
All right, so we have some staff informed us. Does staff wish to point anything out?
Go ahead, you first.
I was just going to point at the one, obviously, we've been doing a lot of work with Thompson Woods Preserve. We're going to have, I shouldn't say we're going to have, Clearwater Conservancy through their Centered Outdoor program is going to be doing a guided outing of Thompson Woods Preserve. Called to your attention Sunday, June 30th at 1 p.m. and 3 p.m. And one I anticipate is going to get canceled is Thursday, July 4th at 6 p.m. But it's an opportunity for the community to visit that property and see what is special about it and hear about it. My understanding is it will be guided by Jasmine Fields, who is the sustainability officer for the Borough of State College, and who has been staff to the Thompson Woods Preserve governance structure. So it's a good opportunity if you haven't had a chance to be out there.
Okay.
The other thing that I would point out immediately behind that particular page that makes the announcement that Mike just spoke about, if you have the opportunity, please avail yourself to review the engineering, zoning, and planning update. It's an excellent document that really gives you a very clear and concise picture of where we're at in terms of activity here within the township. So kudos to that group, that committee, in particular Sharon Myers, who puts that together. But it's a great document, and if you've not taken a look at it, there's pretty much everything you wanted to know about what's going on in the township that is touched either the planning commission, staff, or council is indicated here. It's a great document. That's all.
Okay. Council, staff, other matters. Oh, had to have one.
Not to belabor, this is the first of a couple push-outs in terms of information. I just wanted to make council and the community aware that Trout Unlimited is going to be doing some work here in the next couple weeks on stream bank stabilization along Slab Cabin Run. Properly permitted project, you're just going to see a lot of activity starting here at the township building, and it'll essentially work its way over to Puddintown Road. They're working, as I mentioned, stream bank stabilization. The project's supposed to run through October. Just wanted to kind of call that to your attention, as you're going to see a lot of activity here at the township building to start, and more likely what folks will notice is some muddy water in Slab Cabin. So just kind of putting that out there. We will be pushing it out through our website and our social media as well. This was just a good opportunity to share that with you at council level.
Are they stopping at Puddintown, or are they continuing to Spring Creek?
As far as I know, it's Puddintown.
Yeah, there's basically two phases. There's a small phase beyond Puddintown Road.
Okay.
But it's not a significantly large piece.
It's that one we talked about last year, isn't it?
I think it may be.
Yeah. Yeah, they brought to us. Okay. All right. Anybody wish to make a final motion for the night?
I move that we adjourn.
All right, we're adjourned.